Chapter 195. As the leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuo Jin was far more meticulous than the average person. If the young man in front of him had only come to kill those who wanted to avenge Lin Hantian, he would have killed Linju long ago after he had killed the two disciples of Linju. Why bother with Linju? With his strength, killing Linju would have been a piece of cake. However, he had waited until the other two Golden Essence Elders of the Divine Light sect had arrived before he had appeared, and he had wanted to fight 1 against 3, and in the end he had only killed Linju. What did this mean? It meant that the young man had intended to fight the 3 Golden Essence Elders of the Divine Light sect in front of them, completely to intimidate the Divine Light sect. The young man was definitely not just here to kill them. Sir, you have come to the Divine Light sect, not just to see who wants to avenge Lin Hantian, right? Hearing their leader's question to Zhou Donghuang, the group of senior members of the Divine Light sect present, including the left and right guardians of the Divine Light sect, all turned to look at Zhou Donghuang. Zhou Donghuang nodded lightly in response to Tuo Jin's question. To see who wants to avenge Lin Hantian was just a spur-of-the-moment idea. I have come to the Divine Light sect today to discuss something with you, said Zhou Donghuang. Zhou Donghuang said directly. Dare I ask what it is? Seeing the strength of the young man in front of him, Tuo Jin did not dare to put on airs, but instead lowered his stance and asked respectfully. The Divine Light sect will move away from this spirit stone lode. I want this place. Zhou Donghuang said lightly. The Xinguang Peak, where the Xinguang sect was based, was the location of the largest spirit stone vein on the planet of Ziyun. It was precisely because of this that the founder of the Xinguang sect had chosen to establish his sect here and establish his sect. This time, Zhou Donghuang had come to the Divine Light sect to ask for this Xinguang Peak. Before leaving the planet of Ziyun, he wanted to find the best place for his family to live. And Xinguang Peak was obviously the best place to do so. Following Zhou Donghuang's words, the entire place fell silent again. After a while, Tuo Jin regained his senses and looked angrily at Zhou Donghuang. In a trembling voice he asked, Sir, you must be joking? I, Zhou Donghuang, have no interest in joking with you. Zhou Donghuang spoke again and his gaze sharpened in an instant. This was proof of his determination. In that instant, everyone including Tuo Jin, the leader of the Divine Light sect, and the 6th elder of the Divine Light sect, Tuo Kong, and the 12th elder of the Divine Light sect turned pale. The young man in front of them actually wanted the entire Divine Light sect to move away from the Divine Light Peak and give up the Divine Light Peak, where the Divine Light sect had been established for 1,000 years, to him? Luoha Galaxy. Planet Tianxian. Grandma Father, there's no need to send us off. In the air above the Luo clan residence, a beautiful young woman in a long dress stood beside an ordinary-looking woman in black robes. She had a cold expression, and she was speaking to an old woman and a middle-aged man. The old woman was dressed in a loose green robe and she was skinny. As she looked at the young lady, her eyes were filled with reluctance. Her mouth moved a few times as if she wanted to say something, but in the end she did not. Qinghan, be careful out there. Don't be careless. The middle-aged man was dressed in a long silver robe. His face was like jade and he was handsome and elegant. He was the current leader of the Luo family, Luo Wuchen. Grandma Father, once I enter the sect and familiarize myself with the environment, I will find some time to come back. Luo Qinghan nodded at the old woman and the middle-aged man, then turned to the woman beside her and said respectfully, Senior, I can leave now. The woman nodded, then brought Luo Qinghan and the others behind her and flew out of the Luo family household. Luo Qinghan did not turn back. She was afraid that if she turned back and saw her grandma, she would regret her decision and stay. However, if she stayed on the Tianxian planet, her future training would be limited, and she would not be able to go further. A year ago, a group of adepts from a galaxy called the Honglio Galaxy descended on the Tianxian planet. They claimed to be from the Honglio Galaxy, and they represented the top sects of the Honglio Galaxy in recruiting disciples. They were recruiting disciples for the top sects of the Honglio Galaxy, and they had only one requirement: an ultimate primal core adept who was less than 30 years old, or a late primal core adept who was less than 25 years old. Of course, everything was voluntary. As long as one met the requirements, one could sign up voluntarily, and when it was time to leave, someone would personally come to take them away to the Honglio Galaxy. The Tianxian planet is too small and the Luoha Galaxy is too small. The Tianxian planet had not produced a primordial soul adept for 1,000 years, and the Tianxian planet was one of the most resource-rich planets in the Luoha Galaxy. If one did not leave the Luoha Galaxy, even if one was talented, it would be difficult to enter the primordial soul stage and become a primordial soul adept. Now, although there were primordial soul adepts in the Luoha galaxy, they were extremely rare. And in the Hunglio galaxy, ordinary primordial soul adepts were as common as dogs, and stronger primordial soul adepts were everywhere, and there were even quite a few top primordial soul adepts. In the top sects of the Hunglio galaxy, ordinary primordial soul adepts could not even become elders. And in the Luoha galaxy, even the most ordinary primordial soul adept was a leader high above the rest of the galaxy. Precisely because of this, Luo Qinghan wanted to use this opportunity to leave the Luoha galaxy while she was still young. The woman who had received Luo Qinghan and the others was only one of the group of adepts from the Hunglio galaxy. There were many others who had also received many others. Yuan Zheng. After the woman had brought Luo Qinghan and the others to meet up with the other adepts from the Hunglio galaxy, Luo Qinghan saw a familiar figure behind a middle-aged man dressed in a Taoist robe. The young leader of the Yinzhou sect, Yuan Zheng. Previously, her close friend He Meng had drugged her with the intention of selling her to this Yuan Zheng. Luckily, she had managed to escape, or else her entire life would have been ruined by this person. Therefore, now that she saw Yuan Zheng, Luo Qinghan's face was instantly covered with a layer of frost, and a murderous look flashed in the depths of her eyes. When Luo Qinghan saw Yuan Zheng also noticed her. His eyes lit up and he took the initiative to approach her. "Miss Luo, are you also planning to go to the Hunglio galaxy?" However, Luo Qinghan completely ignored Yuan Zheng. Although she was confident that her current abilities were no weaker than Yuan Zheng's, it was still extremely difficult for her to kill him. Furthermore, even if she had the ability to kill Yuan Zheng now, she could not do it. Once she did, the group of adepts from the Hunglio galaxy would definitely see it as a provocation, and the consequences would be dire. The only thing she could do now was to ignore Yuan Zheng. In the future, when she became stronger and surpassed Yuan Zheng, it would not be too late to find a chance to take revenge. "Miss Luo, although there are not many top sects in the Hunglio galaxy, there are still quite a few. Why don't we join the same sect? That way we can also take care of each other. Isn't that perfect?" Seeing that Luo Qinghan was ignoring him, Yuan Zheng was not only not angry, but instead seemed to be used to it, smiling and licking his lips. Scram. Luo Qinghan frowned and glanced coldly at Yuan Zheng. She spat out a single word, her voice loud and loud, attracting the attention of many. No matter how thick-skinned Yuan Zheng was, he could not help but change his expression when faced with the mocking gazes of a group of people. He looked at Luo Qinghan with a cold look, making Luo Qinghan feel as if she was being stared at by a poisonous snake. "Since Miss Luo does not wish to be disturbed, I shall not disturb you." On the surface, Yuan Zheng was still smiling, as if he could adapt to circumstances and did not take Luo Qinghan's overreaction to heart at all. Of course, this was only on the surface. In his heart, however, Yuan Zheng was secretly cursing, "Luo Qinghan, you better pray that you do not fall into my hands, otherwise I will definitely have you first before killing you. Let's go." Very quickly, the group of people met up and left the Tianshan planet, left the Luoha galaxy, and headed towards the Hunglio galaxy. Of course, when they left, they did not use their physical bodies to cross the galaxy. First, they used the teleporter to be transported to a planet on the edge of the Luoha galaxy, then boarded a spaceship that looked like a large ship. Using the spaceship as a means of transportation, they left the Luoha galaxy at an extremely fast speed and headed towards the Hunglio galaxy. Due to the limitations of the person who had set up the teleporter in the Luoha galaxy, it could only be used to transport between planets within the Luoha galaxy. If one wanted to leave the Luoha galaxy and head to another galaxy, they could only use the indiscriminate teleporter, but that way no one would know which galaxy they would be transported to. The Tianshan planet. In the boundless galaxy, Luo Qinghan stood on the spaceship, looking at the planet on the edge of the Luoha galaxy that was gradually getting further and further away, finally turning into a small dot of light. Her eyes could not help but reveal a look of reluctance. In all her life, this was the first time she had left the Tianshan planet and left the Luoha galaxy for a long journey. As for the indiscriminate teleportation to the planet called Ziyun, a few years ago, it was a complete accident, and to her, it could not be considered a long journey. Just as the spaceship left the Luoha galaxy, as Luo Qinghan looked away, she could not help but think of a figure. A handsome young man dressed in robes whiter than snow, with an extraordinary aura. The young man who had appeared in her dreams many times in the past, once again appeared in her mind without any warning. Based on his age and level of cultivation even in the Ziyun planet, he was destined to be mediocre. Now he probably has a wife and children, living an ordinary and satisfied life? Luo Qinghan thought to herself. Even she did not know why, every time she thought of this she would feel an inexplicable sense of loss, and it was very strong. It was as if she had lost something very important. Taking a deep breath, Luo Qinghan tried to divert her attention. I wonder, what kind of sect will I join when I reach the Honglio Galaxy? Chapter 196. The Ziyun Grand Banquet was a grand banquet that had been passed down for 700 years. It was a grand banquet that belonged to the entire Ziyun planet, with the 5 main sects as the main characters. Every 20 years, the Ziyun Grand Banquet would be held by the 5 main sects in turn. 100 years was a cycle. In other words, every sect would hold a Ziyun Grand Banquet every 100 years. This year, in the year 1233 of the Ziyun era, it was the turn of the Xianyin sect, one of the 5 main sects, to hold the Ziyun Grand Banquet. At that time, the leaders of the other 4 main sects would bring some disciples to the Xianyin sect to participate in the Ziyun Grand Banquet. The date of the Ziyun Grand Banquet was set on the 10th of October, with the meaning of perfection. 700 years ago, the 5 main sects of the Ziyun planet, including the Xianyin sect, had already found a place near the sect to hold the Ziyun Grand Banquet. However, even though the place was ready-made, it still had to be set up a year in advance, or else it would be too late. Since the end of last year, the Xianyin sect leader had ordered to start setting up the venue for the Ziyun Grand Banquet. Thus, a group of Xianyin sect elders and disciples had been busy since the end of last year. The Xianyin sect's venue for the Ziyun Grand Banquet was a vast city. In the center of the city, there was a large empty space for the 5 main sects to use for the Ziyun Grand Banquet. Within the city there was another ring of buildings. Without exception, these buildings were all inns that belonged to the Xianyin sect. The area between the inns and the empty space in the center of the city was the city's free trade market. 10 days before the Ziyun Grand Banquet, this city would be open to the public. At that time, many people would come to trade for what they wanted before the Ziyun Grand Banquet began. The city where the Xianyin sect held the Ziyun Grand Banquet was named Xianyan City. The first word was taken from the Xianyin sect's name, and the second word was taken from the Ziyun Grand Banquet's name, Yan. The Xianyan City will open in 15 minutes. On the morning of the 30th of September 1233 of the Ziyun era, the sun had just risen from the east. Many people were already standing outside the 4 gates of Xianyan City, which was located between the Xianyin sect and the Xianyin kingdom. Besides the many people standing outside the 4 city gates, there were also many people standing in the air above the city walls. Most of them were standing or sitting on the backs of flying beasts, and there were also some primal core adepts standing in the air. However, before Xianyan City was officially opened, no one dared to fly into Xianyan City, not even a group of primal core adepts. This was because, at this moment, there were many people standing in the air above the surrounding walls of Xianyan City. These were the Xianyan sect elders and disciples who had been sent to maintain order in Xianyan City. There was no lack of mid-primal core adepts among them. With the deterrence of these elders and disciples of the Xianyin sect, no one dared to act recklessly. Old man Li, you're here too? If I had told you that you were coming, I would have come with you. This journey from the Thousand Autumns Empire has been really boring. In the void outside Xianyan City, an old man surrounded by pale white mist said to another old man standing in the air not far away. You didn't ask me. The latter shook his head. These 2 old men were both from the Thousand Autumns Empire. They were old acquaintances and were both early primal core adepts. The Thousand Autumns Empire was an empire under the Thousand Autumns sect, one of the 5 great sects of the planet of Ziyun. It was very far from the Xianyan Empire, and there was also the Donghuang Empire between them. These 2 old men had traveled thousands of miles just to join in on the excitement of the Feast of Ziyun. For the Feast of Ziyun, apart from the inner area which could not be entered by people who were not members of the 5 main sects of the planet of Ziyun, the outer area did not restrict spectators. As such, every time the Feast of Ziyun was held, there would be crowds of people from all over the planet of Ziyun. In the planet of Ziyun, there were many people who were proud of being able to witness the Feast of Ziyun once in their lifetime. It's open. After a quarter of an hour, many people exclaimed as the 4 city gates of Xianyan City slowly opened. In the next moment, the group of people outside instantly flowed into Xianyan City like a river. From afar, it looked as if a group of ants had voluntarily sent themselves into the bloody mouth of a giant beast. The people who entered Xianyan City came from all over the planet of Ziyun. There were people from the 5 great empires, and there were also some outsiders. The so-called outsiders referred to those who were not in the 5 great empires or practicing in the 5 great sections. They could be non-affiliated practitioners or they could have families or sects outside of the planet. For example, the 16 countries of the East Valley and the 14 countries of southern Jiang near the Xinguang Empire belonged to the outsiders. As for the people inside, they belonged to the category of people who were not part of the world. Generally speaking, outsiders generally had low levels of practice because of the lack of resources. However, there were a few exceptions, and these people were basically people who had great encounters and opportunities. Young Master, Shenyang City should be in front. In the south of Shenyang City, above the clouds, a huge black shadow broke through the clouds and swooped down. In the blink of an eye, it was near Shenyang City. This huge black shadow was actually a huge black eagle with a blazing golden crown on its head. It looked majestic and awe-inspiring. And on its back sat a handsome young man dressed in clothes whiter than snow. In front of the young man, a little girl of about 8 or 9 years old sat on his lap. She pointed at Shenyang City. "Big brother, Shenyang City seems to have opened. Great, we don't have to wait anymore." The little girl's pink face was filled with excitement. The young man in white was Zhou Donghuang, who had come from the Xinguang Empire. Seeing his sister Yunlu so happy, the corners of his mouth turned up in a rare smile. "Little Gold, go and find an inn to stay in," Zhou Donghuang said to the golden-crowned eagle. "Yes, young master." Little Gold responded, and with a flap of his wings, he turned into a bolt of lightning and flew into Shenyang City. Shenyang City was much smaller than the capital of the Xinguang Empire, but from a bird's-eye view, it was filled with people. It was no less than the number of people shuttling through the capital of the Xinguang Empire. The inns in Shenyang City were under the control of the Shenin sect. Different rooms had different prices. The best courtyards did not even accept gold or silver, only spirit stones. 1 spirit stone per night. From the opening of Shenyang City until the end of the Feast of Ziyun, a total of 10 nights, would cost 10 spirit stones. It must be noted that even among the top 5 sects of Ziyun, only adepts who had attained the primal core stage were qualified to receive spirit stones from the sections. But early primal core adepts could only receive 1 spirit stone per month. Even for the middle primal core stage elders, although they received more spirit stones every month, they could only receive 3 spirit stones per month. Because of this, very few people could afford to stay in the best courtyards of the inns in Shenyang City. Even if they could afford it, few could bear to do so. Before the Feast of Ziyun began, besides the Shenin sect, the guests from the other 4 sects of Ziyun were all staying at the Shenin sect. Under such circumstances, the best courtyards of the inns in Shenyang City were usually left empty. 100 years ago, the inn in Shenyang City had a total of 5 best guest rooms, but they were all unused. This time, the people of the Shenin sect further reduced the number of best guest rooms in Shenyang City, leaving only 3. The elders and disciples of the Shenin sect who were in charge of the inns had thought that even though there were only 3 best courtyards left, no one would stay in them. However, they did not expect that on the first day of Shenyang City's opening, someone would already be staying in one of the best guest rooms. "Wow, brother, this courtyard is huge." The people who stayed in the best courtyard of the inns in Shenyang City were Zhou Donghuang, Yunlu, and the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold. The entire courtyard was Little Gold's bed. As for Zhou Donghuang and Yunlu, they each had a room, and there were only 2 rooms in the courtyard. There was no third room even if they wanted to. 1 spirit stone per night in the courtyard, and there are only 2 rooms in it. The Shenin sect is really unscrupulous. Little Gold spoke in the human language and cursed. The fewer the rooms, the fewer the people staying in it. If it was a group of 4 people who could not sleep in the same room and wanted to stay in the best courtyard, unless they used the sky as their tent and the ground as their bed, or if they set up their own tents, they would have to ask the inns for 2 courtyards. This way the inns could earn twice as much money. "Brother, are we going out now?" Yunlu looked at Zhou Donghuang expectantly. Zhou Donghuang nodded. He had come to Shenyang City so early because of the free trade market in Shenyang City. 10 days before the Feast of Ziyun, people from all over the Ziyun planet were doing business in the free trade market in Shenyang City. Zhou Donghuang had come early to see if there was anything he wanted that even the Divine Light sect did not have in Shenyang City's free trade market. Of course, this was only the secondary purpose of his visit. This time, his main purpose was to resolve the possible threat from Qin Dandan. After all, he would be leaving the Ziyun planet soon, and he could not leave behind such a threat to his family. He could have gone directly to the Shenin sect. However, after knowing that the Feast of Ziyun was about to begin, he was no longer in a hurry. This was because resolving Qin Dandan's problem at the Feast of Ziyun was far more effective than going directly to the Shenin sect. At that time, not only would the Shenin sect be able to see it, but the other 4 major sects of the Ziyun planet would also be able to see it. Furthermore, people from all over the Ziyun planet would also be able to see it. If he made a move at the Shenin sect, he would at most be able to intimidate the Shenin sect. However, if he made a move at the Feast of Ziyun, he would be able to intimidate the entire Ziyun planet. He would not have to worry about anyone daring to cause trouble for his family after he left the Ziyun planet. Chapter 197. The Feast of Ziyun was the highlight of the festivities for the people from all over the planet of Ziyun. They could not afford to miss it, so they had to come early. While they waited, the free market in Shenyang City became a place for them to kill time. Some people had rare treasures that they could sell to the people of Ziyun. If they met a suitable buyer, they could sell it for a good price. Brother, does this look good? Brother, I want this. Brother, this looks good too. In Shenyang City's free trade market, a little girl of about 8 or 9 years old walked past the various stalls. As long as she was interested in something, the young man in white behind her would not be stingy and buy it all for her. This scene caused many people to shake their heads. They felt that this young man was not a good brother and would spoil his little sister sooner or later. There were also many stall owners who could not wait for the little girl to take a liking to the things in their stalls. Along the way, the young man's extravagance attracted the attention of many people, but no one dared to do anything because there were people from the Shenin sect maintaining order in Shenyang City. Unless they left the city, no matter how jealous they were of the young man's wealth, they could not do anything about it. Old man, your broken sword looks like an antique and it's quite unique. How much is it? A voice came from the front, causing Yun Lu to stop and look curiously. Zhou Donghuang, who was following behind Yun Lu, also stopped and looked in the direction of Yun Lu's gaze. With just a glance, he saw an old man in a gray robe sitting cross-legged behind a stall, and a broken sword was placed horizontally on top of his stall. The broken sword was only 1 foot long, and the hilt was intact, but the blade was broken off. Although the broken sword had not rusted, it still looked ancient. Upon closer inspection, one could see that on the surface of the broken sword, there were many intricate patterns. 100 spirit stones. The old man had been resting with his eyes closed, but hearing the question, he suddenly opened his eyes and glanced at the middle-aged man in front of the stall. As soon as he said this, not only was the middle-aged man stunned, but even the group of people who had been paying attention were shocked. 100 spirit stones? Even the late primal core elders of the 5 great sects of Ziyun did not receive so many spirit stones from their sects in a year. Is this old man crazy? A broken sword like this for 100 spirit stones? He's going crazy thinking about spirit stones. As soon as the old man finished speaking, before the middle-aged man in front of the stall could say anything, many people surrounded him and attacked the old man. Facing the attacks of the crowd, the old man's eyes turned cold. Suddenly, a faint white halo appeared around his body and lifted him up into the air. He sat cross-legged in the air. Seeing this, the group of people who were still criticizing the old man shut their mouths one after another, not daring to say another word. Oh my God! This old man was actually a primal core adept? The middle-aged man in front of the stall had originally intended to mock the old man, but upon seeing the old man display the skills of a primal core adept, his expression changed, and he immediately shut his mouth tightly, not daring to utter another word. Oh! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the old man raised his hand, and a wisp of inner yuan flew out and picked up the broken sword from the stall. It floated in the air in front of him. I obtained this broken sword by chance, and it is not afraid of the true Samadhi fire. As the old man spoke, his inner yuan condensed into the true Samadhi fire, which wrapped around the broken sword. But as time passed, not only did the broken sword not show any signs of melting, but it even maintained its previous dark green color, showing no signs of being burned red. Not only is it not afraid of the true Samadhi fire, even if I used the true Samadhi fire to burn it continuously for 3 days and 3 nights, its blade and hilt would still be bone-chillingly cold, and would not be heated in the slightest. The old man continued. As soon as he finished speaking, the old man closed his eyes again and retracted the true Samadhi fire. His whole body slowly descended to the ground, and he sat cross-legged again. And the broken sword also landed on top of the stall at the right time. Not afraid of the true Samadhi fire? Even a spirit weapon can be melted by the true Samadhi fire, right? What exactly is this broken sword? The spirit weapons used by primal core adepts are primal core spirit weapons. But even an ultimate primal core spirit weapon can be melted by the true Samadhi fire of an early primal core adept. Could this broken sword be a Dharma spirit weapon? Dharma spirit weapon? Dharma spirit weapons are spirit weapons used by Dharma adepts, and they require the true samadhi fire of the Dharma adept's inner yuan to be able to melt them. The people present had come from all over the Ziyun planet, and there was no lack of knowledgeable people among them. From their conversations, it seemed like they suspected that the broken sword was a Dharma spirit weapon. If it is a Dharma spirit weapon, even if it is broken, 100 spirit stones is not considered expensive. That's true. Although many people suspected that the broken sword was a Dharma spirit weapon and felt that 100 spirit stones was not expensive, no one stepped forward and took out 100 spirit stones to buy the broken sword. Firstly, it was because no one present could produce that many spirit stones. Secondly, it was all just speculation. Even if there were people present who could produce that many spirit stones, they might not have the courage to do so. This sword, I want it. Just as more and more people gathered to watch, a young man dressed in robes whiter than snow appeared in front of the stall, attracting the attention of the crowd. The old man opened his eyes again and looked at Zhou Donghuang. 100 spirit stones. Zhou Donghuang did not speak. In front of the crowd, he took out 100 spirit stones from the space ring in his hand and casually sent them to the old man in the air. The milky white inner yuan was reflected in the eyes of the crowd, continuously attacking their pupils and their hearts. Just now, when this young man who looked no more than 20 years old, had stood up and said that he wanted to buy the broken sword, the crowd had thought that he was joking. 100 spirit stones was not something that an impulsive young man could produce. However, when the young man really took out 100 spirit stones and sent them to the old man with the milky white inner yuan, the doubts in their hearts were instantly shattered. Mid-primal core adept? My God! If his age is really what he looks like, his martial arts talent can be said to be extraordinary. Under the shocked gazes of the crowd, the owner of the stall, the old man, was stunned for a moment before regaining his senses. He took the 100 spirit stones and kept them in his pocket. Thank you, my lord. The old man stood up and bowed to the young man to thank him. On the planet of Ziyun, where the strong were respected, the strong were respected. Even though the young man in front of him looked no more than 20 years old, the level of practice that he had displayed was enough to make the old man bow. Zhou Donghuang nodded slightly. With a wave of his hand, his inner yuan wrapped around the broken sword and brought it to his hand. Then he stored it in his space ring. The broken sword, just as the few people present had guessed, was indeed a Dharma spirit weapon used by Dharma adepts. However, it was not an ordinary Dharma spirit weapon. It was an ultimate Dharma spirit weapon. Even though the inscriptions on it were incomplete, according to Zhou Donghuang's calculations, it was still enough to unleash the power of a mid-grade Dharma spirit weapon. When I enter the Dharma stage, I can use my inner yuan to condense the fourth true fire, reforge it and rearrange the inscriptions. Then, it will be able to unleash the power of an ultimate Dharma spirit weapon. Zhou Donghuang thought to himself. Under the silent gazes of the crowd, the young man dressed in white slowly walked away into the distance. The little girl beside him also skipped happily as she followed him. Looking at the backs of the young man and the little girl, many people felt a lingering fear in their hearts. He's actually a primal core adept? My God! Just now, when I saw him spending so much money to buy things for that little girl, I got greedy. If not for the fact that the Shenin sect was maintaining order in Shenyang City, I would have robbed him long ago. Me too. Now that I think about it, I really saved my life. Zhu Lianqing was a disciple of the Shenin sect. His level of practice was at the early primal core stage, but because he was not even 50 years old, his treatment in the Shenin sect was no less than that of an ordinary elder. Most importantly, his teacher was the second elder of the Shenin sect, a late primal core adept. His teacher was also one of the 2 golden essence elders of the Shenin sect. In the Shenin sect, Zhu Lianqing was like a member of the Crown Prince faction. The group of elders in the Shenin sect, whether they were of the mid or late primal core stage, did not dare to provoke him lightly. Dharma spirit weapon? A mid-primal core adept. Zhu Lianqing had seen everything that had just happened. His eyes flashed and he silently followed the young man in white. Although he felt that his movements were silent, Zhou Donghuang had already noticed him. However, Zhou Donghuang did not care about him. Because he was lazy. And because he did not care. It was only when he saw the young man bring the little girl back to the inn that Zhu Lianqing stopped and turned to leave Shenyang City, returning to the Shenin sect. Teacher, I saw a young man in Shenyang City spend 100 spirit stones to buy a seemingly damaged Dharma spirit weapon. After Zhu Lianqing returned to the Shenin sect, he found his teacher, the second elder of the Shenin sect, Li Pingji. Dharma spirit weapon? Li Pingji was an old man in a loose black robe. His face was full of wrinkles and his body exuded an aura of vicissitudes. It was obvious that he was not young anymore. However, after hearing Zhu Lianqing's words, his eyes lit up. Are you sure it was a Dharma spirit weapon? I'm not sure. Zhu Lianqing shook his head. However, the person who sold the broken sword was an early primal core adept. And the person who bought the broken sword was a mid-primal core adept. Furthermore, that mid-primal core adept looked to be at most 20 years old. His appearance does not match his true age. He must have taken good care of himself to look so young. End of this chapter. Chapter 198. 100 Spirit Stones. The mid-primal core adept gave it very readily. Zhu Lianqing said. 100 Spirit Stones? Li Pingji's eyes narrowed. Even as the second elder of the Shenin sect, he only received 96 Spirit Stones a year, not even 100. That mid-primal core adept had given someone 100 Spirit Stones in exchange for a suspected Dharma spirit weapon without hesitation? The early primal core adept burned that broken sword with his samadhi fire, but not only did it not melt, it did not even turn red. Zhu Lianqing continued, also, on that broken sword there were some complicated patterns. This is very similar to the spirit weapon of the Shenin sect. That mid-primal core adept could not be a fool. Li Pingji thought for a moment, then guessed, that broken sword is definitely a Dharma spirit weapon. Go and buy that broken sword from him. He spent 100 spirit stones to buy it, so give him 110 spirit stones. I think he will give our Shenin sect some face. Li Pingji raised his hand and 110 spirit stones flew out and floated in front of Zhu Lianqing. His words were full of confidence. The Shenin sect was one of the top 5 sects of the Ziyun planet. This was the source of his confidence. Yes, master. Zhu Lianqing left the Shenin sect and went to Shenyang City to look for master. As expected, Zhu Lianqing was rejected. Sir, my master is the second elder of the Shenin sect, Li Pingji. He is the one who wants to buy the broken sword you bought today. Zhu Lianqing looked at the young man in white and said in a low voice, his eyes threatening. Not for sale. Zhou Donghuang rejected calmly. My master is one of the 2 golden essence adepts of the Shenin sect. Zhu Lianqing's voice grew darker. Oh. Zhou Donghuang's eyes flashed. Zhongya? You are quite knowledgeable, you even know my master's name. However, my grandmaster is Qi Ming, the junior of Grandmaster Zhongya. Zhu Lianqing said proudly. Zhu Lianqing originally thought that since he had brought up his master ancestor, the young man in front of him also knew that the Shenin sect's Jindan stage ancestor would definitely give him face. However, he didn't expect to be rejected. The other party did not give him any face at all. Your Excellency, are you not giving face to the 2 ancestors of our mysterious Yin sect? Are you not giving our Shenin sect any face? Zhu Lianqing's face was so gloomy that it seemed like it could drip water. Scram. Hearing the threat in Zhu Lianqing's words, Zhou Donghuang's face turned cold, and a murderous glint flashed in his eyes. Zhu Lianqing was so frightened that his expression changed, and he did not dare to say another word as he hurriedly turned and fled. If a mid-primal core adept really wanted to kill him, he would not even have the chance to escape. When he left, Zhu Lianqing didn't even dare to say anything harsh. Chindandan Zhongya. We will meet again soon. After Zhu Lianqing left, Zhou Donghuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. Back then, when Zhongya had taken Chindandan away, he had reminded him that once Chindandan was taken away, it would be considered as forming karma with him. In the end, Zhongya had still taken Chindandan away. This time, he had come to the Feast of Ziyun precisely to settle this matter in front of all the people from all over the planet of Ziyun. Damn it. Damn it. That guy, he didn't give me any face at all. After leaving the inn, Zhu Lianqing left Shenyang City with an ugly expression and returned to the Shenin sect. The first thing he did was to look for his master. He didn't give me any face? Did you mention me? The second elder of the Shenin sect, Li Pingji, had an ugly expression on his face. I didn't just mention you, master, I also mentioned senior and senior granduncle, but he still didn't give me any face. Zhu Lianqing said angrily, I finally mentioned the Shenin sect. But not only did he not give me any face, he even told me to scram. Master, why don't you personally go and snatch that broken sword? If he doesn't know what's good for him, you can kill him. As he said this, Zhu Lianqing's eyes were full of murderous intent. In 10 days it will be the Feast of Ziyun. Before we find out his background, we shouldn't act rashly. After all, the Shenin sect is the host of this Feast of Ziyun. Although Li Pingji was angry, he did not lose his rationality. I will go see your senior granduncle and ask him to send someone to keep an eye on that young man. If he still doesn't know what's good for him after the Feast of Ziyun is over, we will snatch it by force." As he said this, Li Pingzhi went to look for his master, one of the two golden essence elders of the Shenin sect, Qi Ming. Qi Ming was also the distinguished elder of the Shenin sect. There were two distinguished elders in the Shenin sect. They were the two golden essence elders of the Shenin sect, Qi Ming and Zhongye. Dharma spirit weapon? Qi Ming was an old man dressed in a long blue robe. He looked even older than Li Pingzhi because he was older than Li Pingzhi by a few decades. "Master, Uncle Master does not have much time left. He probably has no hope of entering the Dharma stage. If that broken sword is indeed a Dharma spirit weapon, you might be able to use it to understand the mysteries of Dharma and successfully enter the Dharma stage in the next few decades, extending your lifespan by 300 years. Li Pingzhi said to Qi Ming with a passionate gaze. "You have arranged this matter very well." After listening to Li Pingzhi's explanation of the entire situation and his final decision, Qi Ming nodded his head in satisfaction. "However, there is one thing that you are wrong about. 3 years ago, after your uncle master accepted Chindandan as his disciple, his thoughts were clear and he is now half a step into the Dharma stage. If there are no accidents, he can definitely enter the Dharma stage and become a Dharma adept before he dies of old age." Qi Ming's gaze was passionate. "As for the sect leader, I will inform him. However, I have to inform your martial uncle about this. If that broken sword is indeed a Dharma spirit weapon, he might be able to directly enter the Dharma stage and become a Dharma adept." Qi Ming immediately went to look for his senior, Zhongye. Zhongye was the golden essence adept who had come to the Valley of the Medicine Masters and saved Chindandan when Donghuang was about to kill her. 3 years had passed and Zhongye looked even older than before. However, his eyes were bright and full of energy, and his aura had become stronger and stronger. He was completely different from how he was 3 years ago. "If I have a Dharma spirit weapon, I will have a higher chance of entering the Dharma stage." After hearing about the Dharma spirit weapon, even though Zhongye's heart was as calm as still water, he could not help but feel excited. "This matter let's do as Li Pingzhi said. Junior, go and tell the sect leader that he must send 2 late primal core elders to keep an eye on that young man. If that young man leaves before the Feast of Ziyun ends, follow him and kill him. Then we can take the broken sword that seems to be a Dharma spirit weapon from him." Zhongye's eyes shone brightly, like 2 bright stars in the night sky, dazzling and eye-catching. "Understood." Qi Ming replied and left. "Congratulations, teacher." In the courtyard where Zhongye was, the girl who was trimming the flowers stopped what she was doing and congratulated Zhongye after Qi Ming left. This girl was the disciple that Zhongye had taken in 3 years ago, Chindandan. 3 years later, Chindandan's face was no longer childish. She was wearing a light blue dress and her face was beautiful. Her figure was graceful, and her long legs were especially eye-catching. "We are still not sure if it is a Dharma spirit weapon. It is too early to thank him." Zhongye shook his head. As he spoke, he looked at Chindandan. "In 10 days at the Feast of Ziyun, our Shenin sect and the other 4 sects of Ziyun will send people from the early Khanate stage to the ultimate primal core stage to compete. There will be prizes for all 8 competitions, and the prizes will be given directly to the disciples of the sects who win. Among the early Khanate disciples of our Shenin sect, I am prepared to give you a spot." Half a year ago, Chindandan had already entered the Khanate stage and become a Khanate adept. "Thank you, teacher." Chindandan's eyes lit up and she thanked him profusely. "At that time you will have 4 chances to compete. As long as you can win 3 matches, after the Feast of Ziyun ends, I will ask your head senior brother to accompany you to your hometown and help you kill your enemies," Zhongye said. Hearing this, Chindandan's eyes lit up even more. Her head senior brother, Zhongye's disciple, was the head elder of the Shenin sect. In the Shenin sect, he was the second most powerful late primal core adept, and his ability was second only to the leader of the Shenin sect. "Prepare well. You still have 10 days left." As he finished speaking, Zhongye returned to his room to train. Chindandan was excited for a while before she calmed down. Her eyes flashed coldly. "Donghuang, I hope you are still alive and well. After the Feast of Ziyun ends, I will return to the 16 countries of the East Valley with head senior brother. I will bring your mother, Lin Lan, to you and torture her to death in front of you. Then I will cut you into 1,000 pieces one by one." Chindandan muttered to herself, as if she was full of confidence in her performance at the Feast of Ziyun. In the next 10 days, the people from the 4 main sects of the Ziyun planet, including the Divine Light sect, arrived at the Shenin sect's base and temporarily stayed there. 10 days passed in the blink of an eye. The Feast of Ziyun arrived as scheduled. In Shenyang City, the sky had not completely brightened yet, but a large group of people had already gathered in the sky above the vast open space in the center of the city. They had all come in advance to reserve seats. Most of the seats with the best view had already been occupied. Now, on the vast open space, a high platform had been erected. Around the high platform in 5 directions, there were also rows of spectator stands. These spectator stands were prepared for the main characters of today's Feast of Ziyun, the 5 main sections. At the Feast of Ziyun, each of the 5 main sects will send out 19 people to spar with those of the same level of practice from the other 4 main sects. The winner of the spar will receive generous rewards from the 5 main sections. 19 people, among them there are 3 early Khanate stage, 3 middle Khanate stage, 3 late Khanate stage and 3 ultimate Khanate stage. 2 early primal core, 2 middle primal core, 2 late primal core and 1 ultimate primal core. Chapter 199. The Feast of Ziyun was a stage for the 5 main sects of Ziyun to showcase their strength and heritage. The reason why they had invited guests from all over Ziyun was to let everyone in Ziyun know that as long as the 5 main sects were on Ziyun, they were the sky of Ziyun. They're here. About 2 hours after the sun rose, the group of people in the sky above Shenyang City, whether they were riding on flying beasts or flying primal core adepts, all parted to form a path. Those who did not have the ability to fly also crowded around the perimeter, their eyes fixed on the sky. There was a group of people riding the wind towards them. Upon closer inspection, one could see that these people were divided into 5 groups. That's the leader of the Shenin sect, Lu Yi. In the air, someone recognized one of the 2 people in the lead. He was dressed in a long green robe and his forehead was full of wrinkles. His hair was white and he was the leader of the Shenin sect, Lu Yi. The leader of the Shenin sect? Although he is walking side by side with that person, he seems to be intentionally lagging behind. For the leader of the Shenin sect to do this, he must be one of the 2 golden essence adepts of the Shenin sect. Soon many people looked at the old man beside Lu Yi, the Shenin sect leader. He looked even older but his gaze was unusually sharp and they vaguely guessed his identity. One of the 2 golden essence adepts of the Shenin sect will be 300 years old in a few days, and he is at a critical juncture of breaking through to the Dharma stage, so it is impossible for him to be here. This person must be Elder Qi Ming of the Shenin sect. When someone guessed which Jindan stage ancestor of the Shenin sect he was, many people's eyes suddenly became hot. Golden essence adept. He stood at the pinnacle of the martial way of Ziyun. If not for this occasion, they would never have the chance to meet such a person in their lifetime. The golden essence adept of the Shenin sect, Qi Ming, is a godlike person. Although I am far away in the Thousand Autumn Empire, I still hear of him. 20 years ago, 3 late primal core itinerant adepts and 5 mid-primal core itinerant adepts joined forces, intending to steal the large amount of spirit stones produced in the spirit stone vein controlled by the Shenin sect. At that time, Qi Ming, who had just entered the ultimate primal core stage, single-handedly killed all 8 of them in a short span of 10 breaths. That was how he became famous. Although Senior Qi Ming is a golden core adept, he is not the strongest in the Shenin sect. The strongest person in the Shenin sect is still Senior Zhongya. Of course, Senior Zhongya is currently the most senior in the Shenin sect. 100 years ago, he had already entered the ultimate primal core stage and became a golden essence adept. During the Feast of Ziyun, the 5 main sects of the Ziyun planet would also send out their golden essence adepts to spar and exchange pointers with each other, displaying the supreme power of their respective sections. It was obvious that the Shenin sect's golden elixir cultivator, Qi Ming, would be participating in today's Feast of Ziyun. Among those people, most of them are Buddhist adepts. They should be from the Divine Light sect. Very quickly, the gazes of the crowd landed on another group of people. Among these people, most of them were not only bald, but they were also dressed in cassocks. Impressively, they were all Buddhist adepts. The foundation of the Divine Light sect is the strongest among the 5 main sects of the Ziyun planet. The best spirit stone vein in the Ziyun planet is occupied by the Divine Light sect. In the history of the Ziyun planet, there have been a total of 2 Dharma adepts. The first Dharma adept came from the Tianwu sect. As for the second Dharma adept, which is also the one who appeared recently, he came from the Divine Light sect. The Dharma adept from the Tianwu sect left the Ziyun planet as soon as he entered the Dharma stage, and did not fight for any benefits for the Tianwu sect. Unlike the Dharma adept from the Divine Light sect, who remained on the Ziyun planet. Although he did not make any moves, the Divine Light sect that he led was publicly recognized as the top sect of the Ziyun planet. After confirming that the people in front of them were from the Divine Light sect, more people began to focus their attention on the two people leading the group. Among the two people leading the Divine Light sect, that middle-aged monk should be the current leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin. Although Tuajin is young, just over 100 years old, he is already a late primal core adept, and his strength is second only to the three golden essence elders of the Divine Light sect. Compared to the Dharma adept of the Divine Light sect, Lord Tuajin entered the late primal core stage earlier. Many people say that he will be the next Dharma adept of the Ziyun planet. The old monk in the golden cassock next to Lord Tuajin should be one of the two guardians of the Divine Light sect. I wonder if it is Guardian Ci Yun or Guardian Ci Xian. It must be Guardian Ci Xian. Guardian Ci Yun is elusive, and he is nearing the end of his 300-year lifespan. It is impossible for him to participate in the Feast of Ziyun. 20 years ago, Guardian Ci Xian participated in the Feast of Ziyun for the Divine Light sect. This time, it will not be an exception. Guardian Ci Xian fought with Elder Qi Ming of the Shenin sect 20 years ago and defeated him. Guardian Ci Xian entered the ultimate primal core stage a long time ago, whereas Elder Qi Ming only entered the ultimate primal core stage 20 years ago. Naturally, he is more skilled. After paying attention to the group of people from the Divine Light sect, the crowd's gaze fell on the other three groups of people. The people from the Qianqiu sect. The people from the Tianwu sect. The people from the Shueisha sect. Other than the Shenin sect, who was the host and had more people, there were only 20 people from the other four major sections. At least, only 20 people had shown themselves. Of course, among the crowd of onlookers, there would definitely be elders and disciples of the major sects hidden everywhere. It was just that they did not walk together with the main characters of the major sects today. Other than the people from the Shenin sect, there were now 20 people from the four major sections. Other than the leaders of their respective sects, the remaining 19 people were the ones who were going to compete today. A group of Khanate adepts were also led by the primal core adepts of the various sections. They landed in the spectator seats in the center of Shenyang City and sat down in a few rows. The people from each sect took up a section of the spectator seats. In the first row there were only two people. The leaders of the various sects, as well as the golden essence adepts of the various sects who had come today. Everyone is here. The Feast of Ziyun is about to begin. The eyes of the onlookers from all over the planet of Ziyun lit up, their faces full of anticipation. These people had traveled thousands of miles to come to Shenyang City just to witness the entire process of this Feast of Ziyun. This would not only be a feast in their lives, but it would also be something they could brag about for the rest of their lives. The 5 leaders of the 5 major sects of the planet of Ziyun are all gathered together, and there are also 5 golden essence adepts who stand at the pinnacle of the planet of Ziyun. Such a scene can only be seen at the Feast of Ziyun. Today I have seen the leaders of the 5 major sects of the planet of Ziyun, as well as 5 golden essence adepts. I have no regrets in this life. 5 golden essence adepts. Almost half of the golden essence adepts of the planet of Ziyun are present. Under the expectant gazes of the crowd, the Shenin sect, as the host, finally made a move. Everyone, I am the leader of the Shenin sect, Lu Yi. The leader of the Shenin sect, Lu Yi, rose from his seat in the spectator seats, and in the blink of an eye he was in the air above the high platform. His body spun 360 degrees in the air, and his gaze swept across the surrounding onlookers. Now I announce that the Feast of Ziyun officially begins. When the Feast of Ziyun began, in an inn in Shenyang City, a huge black eagle soared into the sky. On its back sat a delicate little girl, and behind the little girl stood a young man. The young man was dressed in a clean white robe, and he stood with his hands behind his back. His gaze was calm and focused in front of him, full of disdain. In that instant, the young man's tall figure seemed to be able to support the heavens and the earth. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, the giant eagle seemed to transform into a bolt of lightning and flew into the clouds. Stop! As the young man spoke, the giant eagle stopped, and the little girl on the eagle's back turned to look at the young man with a puzzled expression. Brother, aren't we going to watch the Feast of Ziyun now? Shall Lu wait here with little gold for a while? I'll go settle some small matters. Zhou Donghuang patted Yun Lu's little head affectionately, and with a slight smile his figure flickered, and in the blink of an eye he disappeared without a trace. Whoosh! In the sky above the heads of the 2 sneaky figures that were about to pass through the clouds, a white figure appeared, causing the 2 sneaky figures to hurriedly stop in their tracks. You two have been watching me for a whole 10 days. Zhou Donghuang looked down at the two old men, his white robe fluttering in the wind. Standing in the air with his hands behind his back, he was like a superior looking down on two inferior people. You discovered it long ago? As the two old men's expressions changed slightly, they also noticed the silver halo surrounding Zhou Donghuang's body. You've broken through? In their eyes, the young man in front of them was only a mid-primal core adept. But now it seemed that he was no longer a mid-primal core adept, but a late primal core adept, catching up to them in terms of level of practice. And just as the two old men's expressions changed, the silver inner yuan around Zhou Donghuang's body suddenly exploded, and in an instant, it was like a blazing flame was burning. The vast and majestic inner yuan rushed towards them, suffocating the two old men. What a thick inner yuan. We're both silver essence adepts, but why does his inner yuan feel like it's at least twice as thick as mine? Feeling the inner yuan of the young man in front of them, the two old men's expressions changed again. Boom. The silver flames on the surface of Zhou Donghuang's body suddenly exploded, and at a speed that the two old men could not even sense, he closed in on them, his hand rising and falling. Whoosh. As his palms swept past, there was a burst of silver light, and the head of one of the old men flew directly into the air. Fresh blood splattered everywhere, smearing the face of the other old man. At this time, Zhou Donghuang had already moved to the other side, his back facing the surviving old man, whose face was pale with fright, and whose entire body was trembling violently. Tell Zhongya that I, Zhou Donghuang, will wait for him at the Feast of Ziyun to settle the karma. End of this chapter. Chapter 200. Xianyan City. At the venue of the Feast of Ziyun. Bang. A soft sound rang out. It was a young man who had raised his hand and landed a palm on another young man, knocking him off the high platform and claiming victory in this match. The young man struck out with his palm, releasing a foot of qi. As for the other young man, when he landed awkwardly, a similar foot of qi swept out from his feet. Obviously both of them were early Khanate adepts. And now the Feast of Ziyun had begun. The early Khanate adepts from the 5 major sects of Ziyun were divided into 3 groups of 5 and would begin the first round of sparring. Number 2. Dressed in a long green dress, a young lady with delicate features sat in the second row of the audience. She looked at the jade slip in her hand, her eyes shining. The first round of sparring is about to end. The lady looked at the white-robed Buddhist adept on the high platform, and her heart skipped a beat. As long as the two from the Tianwu sect and the Xinguang sect decide the winner, it will be the turn of the second group, including me, to fight. Master said that if I win 3 rounds, he will let senior brother follow me back to the 16 countries of the East Valley to help me take revenge. But I want to win 4 rounds. The lady was Qin Dandan. Her eyes shone and her face was full of confidence. The first round of sparring at the Feast of Ziyun were 15 early Khanate adepts, 3 from each sect. The 15 would draw lots and be divided into 3 groups, and the strongest person in each group would be decided. Then, the 3 who emerged from the 3 groups would receive generous rewards from the 5 major sects of Ziyun. Now, the strongest person in the first group was about to be decided. Senior, do you want to rest? The white-robed Buddhist adept was an early Khanate adept from the Xinguang sect. He looked to be about 20 years old, and when he smiled at the young man on the high platform, 2 dimples appeared on his cheeks. It didn't take much, it won't affect me. The young man, who was also the first early Khanate adept from the Tianwu sect, shook his head lightly. In that case, senior, you go first. The Xinguang sect disciple put his palms together and said politely, "All right." The young man did not stand on ceremony. His entire body was covered with a layer of inner qi, and it was as if his entire body had turned into a green flame, pouncing on the Divine Light sect disciple as if to swallow him up. Faced with the aggressive young man, the disciples of the Divine Light sect also had serious expressions. As the young man advanced, they retreated and defended themselves. After a while, he finally regained the initiative. Bang! After 10 moves, the disciple of the Divine Light sect casually threw a punch, and his inner qi exploded, mercilessly knocking the young man, who had already won 3 rounds, off the stage. Victory! The disciples of the Divine Light sect had come out on top at this year's Feast of Ziyun. He is indeed a disciple of the Divine Light sect. Although he is only an early Khanate stage adept, the power he has displayed is so strong that in the entire Ziyun planet, there are only a handful of early Khanate stage adepts who can compare to him. Most mid-Khanate stage adepts would have to expend some effort to defeat him, even if they could. The performance of the Divine Light sect disciples made the onlookers gasp in amazement. The Divine Light sect was indeed the top sect of the Ziyun planet in the past. Even a small early Khanate stage disciple from the sect was so amazing. Sect leader Tuajin Chaogang is already the strongest early Khanate stage disciple in our Tianwu sect. Your Divine Light sect disciples are amazing. The leader of the Tianwu sect, a burly middle-aged man dressed in loose training garb, looked at the leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin, from afar and exclaimed in admiration. Sect leader Yi, you flatter me. Tuajin smiled modestly. The leader of the Tianwu sect was called Yi Wen. He looked very rough, but his name was very genteel and he sounded more like a scholar than a warrior. After the Divine Light sect disciple won and left the stage, the leader of the Xianin sect, Lu Yi, sat among the audience and said in a clear voice, "Now the disciples of the various sects who have lot number 2 can go up to the stage." Whoosh. Before Lu Yi could finish speaking, a green figure in the audience behind him had already left the audience seats like a ghost, and in the blink of an eye she was on the stage. It was Qin Dandan. The goal that Qin Dandan's teacher, Zhongya, had set for her was to win 3 rounds, so she was the first to leave the stage. Even though she was confident that she was not inferior to the early Khanate stage disciples of the other 4 sects, she was still the first to ascend the stage. A female disciple? The Xianin sect is letting a female disciple go up. At the same time that Qin Dandan appeared, not only did the audience feel that the Xianin sect was being reckless, but the people of the other 4 sects also felt that the Xianin sect was being too reckless. Female adepts, because their bodies were innately weaker than male adepts, were usually at a disadvantage when fighting adepts of the same level of practice. Sect leader Lu, is the Xianin sect giving benefits to the disciples of the other 4 sects? You actually sent a female disciple. The leader of the Shueisha sect, a middle-aged man in a blood-red robe, looked at the leader of the Xianin sect, Lu Yi, and shook his head as he grinned. Sect leader Hu, don't underestimate this female disciple of the Xianin sect. Lu Yi smiled calmly. What? Could it be that this female disciple of the Xianin sect has some special abilities? The face of the leader of the Shueisha sect, Hu Qingxua, was full of disdain. After Qin Dandan went up, the early Khanate stage disciples of the other 4 sects who had gotten lot number 2 did not move. All of them felt that it would be unfair for them to fight a female. No one was willing to stand out. They were all afraid of being laughed at. Her name is Qin Dandan. Before Lu Yi could respond to Hu Qingxua, the old man sitting beside Lu Yi, the Xianin sect's supreme elder Qi Ming, glanced at Hu Qingxua and said, "She is the disciple that my senior brother took in 3 years ago." As Qi Ming finished speaking, the entire place fell into a dead silence. Who was Qi Ming? The grand elder of the Xianin sect. One of the 2 golden essence elders of the Xianin sect. In the Xianin sect, the only person who could be called senior by him was the other golden essence elder of the Xianin sect, the strongest in the Xianin sect, Zhongya. She is actually senior Zhongya's disciple? The disdain on the face of the leader of the Shueisha sect, Hu Qingxua, completely disappeared. Instead, it was replaced by shock. He had never imagined that this female disciple of the Xianin sect would be a disciple of the Xianin sect's patriarch, Zhongya. Before many people could recover from their shock, a figure had already flown out from the spectator seats where the 1,000-year sect members were seated and directly climbed onto the high platform. It was a young man dressed in embroidered robes. He was also the early Khanate stage adept from the 1,000-year sect who had drawn lot number 2. Damn it! Someone beat me to it. This fellow, isn't he too fast? I missed him. When the 1,000-year sect disciple climbed onto the high platform and faced Qin Dandan, the early Khanate stage disciples from the other 3 sects who had gotten lot number 2 all beat their chests and stamped their feet, feeling that it was a great pity. They had previously felt that attacking Qin Dandan would be a loss of face. But now they felt that this was their chance to make a name for themselves in one battle. In their eyes, Qin Dandan was no longer just a Xianin sect disciple. She was the disciple of the Xianin sect's golden essence adept, Patriarch Zhongya. As long as they defeated Qin Dandan, they could brag everywhere in the future that they had once defeated a disciple of the Xianin sect's golden essence adept. This would be enough for them to brag about for the rest of their lives. Junior Sister Dandan, I am Tan from the 1,000-year sect. Just as the 1,000-year sect disciple was about to introduce himself, Qin Dandan interrupted him again and said calmly, I have no interest in knowing the name of a defeated opponent. The moment Qin Dandan said this, the 1,000-year sect disciple's expression changed drastically in anger. As for the others, they were also in an uproar as they felt the strong confidence revealed in Qin Dandan's words. Bang! Just as Qin Dandan finished speaking, the chi under her feet had already exploded. Her entire body pushed off the ground and flew out like an arrow that had been released from a bow, shooting towards the thousand-year sect disciple. After the thousand-year sect disciple came back to his senses, his expression was very ugly. He wanted to regain his dignity through his limbs, but he realized that Qindandan was not shooting randomly. Her ability was indeed above his. Moreover, Qindandan had the upper hand by striking first. After 3 moves, the thousand-year sect disciple was struck off the high platform by Qindandan's palm blade. At this time, the other 3 disciples from the 3 major sects who had drawn lot number 2 also had solemn expressions. They no longer dared to underestimate Qindandan just because she was a woman. Bang! Crack! Boom! Under the shocked gazes of the spectators, Qindandan only used 2 moves to defeat one of the 3 remaining people. As for the other 2, one used 5 moves and the other used 6 moves. Qindandan successfully reached the top of this year's Feast of Ziyun's second group of early Khanate adepts. Impressive. Impressive. As expected of the disciple of a golden essence adept. Women are not inferior to men. After Qindandan reached the top, the crowd unsurprisingly burst into exclamations. The crowd was not stingy with their words of praise. Even some of the higher-ups of the 4 major sects began to praise Qindandan, and at the same time, they flattered the Shenin sect's golden essence adept, Zhongya. Senior Zhongya is not only powerful, but the way he teaches his disciples is equally amazing. At this moment, as the main character, Qindandan stood on the high platform, listening to the praises and flattery coming from all around her. She raised her head proudly like a proud peacock. At the same time, in Qindandan's mind, the figure of a youth dressed in snow-white clothes flashed without any warning. It's a pity that Zhou Donghuang won't be able to see this. Zhou Donghuang, I hope you're not dead yet. After the Feast of Ziyun ends, I will bring Big Senior Brother back to the 16 countries of the East Valley. I want you to witness your mother being tortured to death by me, and then I will cut you into 1,000 pieces. Just as Qindandan regained her senses and was about to step off the stage. In 3 years, Qindandan, this is how much progress you've made? A sudden calm voice floated down from the sky, as if it contained some kind of magical power, suppressing all the noise in the crowd. End of this chapter. Chapter 201. At the Feast of Ziyun. In the air above the stage, a young man stood with his hands behind his back. Dressed in a robe as white as snow, he was handsome and had an extraordinary aura. His gaze was sharp as he looked down at Qindandan, who was about to step down from the stage. At that moment, his voice, which seemed to contain magic power, suppressed all the noise in the area and successfully attracted everyone's attention. In 3 years, Qindandan, this is how much progress you've made? The crowd turned to look, and when they saw the young man's face clearly, other than the Divine Light sect's right-hand man Ci Xian, Lord Tuajin, and a few other Primal Core adepts, everyone else's eyes widened. Primal Core adept? Look at the milky white inner yuan around him, he's obviously a mid-Primal Core adept. This young man who looked like a mid-Primal Core adept looked to be about 20 years old. No matter how good he was at maintaining his youthful looks, he could not be that old. Who is he? I don't know. Looking at his posture, he doesn't seem friendly and he seems to be targeting Qindandan. He's just a mid-Primal Core adept, and he dares to offend Qindandan? Qindandan is a disciple of the Shenin sect's golden essence adept, Zhongya, and there are so many senior members of the Shenin sect here. Everyone's gazes, including those from the Shenin sect, subconsciously fell on Qindandan at this moment. Zhou Donghuang. Qindandan had never imagined that the person she had been praying for to be alive would actually appear in front of her in the next moment. Not only was he alive, but he had also entered the mid-Primal Core stage and become a mid-Primal Core adept. In 3 years, the childishness on his face had faded, and he looked much more mature. Most importantly, he had further widened the gap between them. Moreover, this gap made her feel suffocated and hopeless. In 3 years she had broken through from level 4 of Qi Gathering to become an early Khanate adept. In the same period of time, Zhou Donghuang had broken through from the early Khanate stage to the mid-Primal Core adept, leaving her in the dust. A 22-year-old mid-Primal Core adept. Others might think that the young man in front of her looked like he was in his 20s because he was good at maintaining his youthful looks, but Qindandan knew his age very well. He was only 22 this year. How is this possible? Qindandan couldn't believe it. She even wondered if she was dreaming. However, after a moment, she confirmed that she was not dreaming. The young man before her had indeed become a mid-Primal Core adept at the age of 22. Something's wrong. Suddenly, An idea flashed in Qin Dandan's mind, as if she had suddenly thought of something, and her eyes lit up. So what if he is a mid-primal core adept now? Could he be teacher's match? Among the higher-ups of our Shenin sect, there are many who are capable of killing him. As she thought of this, the shock on Qin Dandan's face disappeared and was replaced by a cold look. She stared at Zhou Donghuang with a murderous look in her eyes. Zhou Donghuang, I really did not expect that you would actually enter the mid-primal core stage and become a mid-primal core adept. Qin Dandan raised her head and looked at the young man. I have to say this is really surprising. But that's all there is to it. Today, since you are here, don't even think of leaving. As soon as she finished speaking, Qin Dandan, who was deeply afraid that the young man would escape, immediately looked towards the audience where the higher-ups of the Shenin sect were. Uncle Master, sect leader, senior brother, this person is my mortal enemy. 3 years ago, he spoke rudely to teacher and even threatened to take revenge on the Shenin sect. As soon as Qin Dandan said this, whoosh, 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 the Shenin sect Grand Elder Qi Ming, Shenin sect leader Lu Yi, and the Shenin sect head elder Bai Shitang all moved, surrounding Zhou Donghuang in a triangular formation. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After Qi Ming and the other two moved, the remaining primal core adepts of the Shenin sect also moved, surrounding the perimeter and staring at Zhou Donghuang fiercely. You spoke rudely to my senior brother? And even threatened to take revenge on the Shenin sect? Qi Ming's gaze was like lightning as he stared at the young man in white. His face was expressionless, but there was a hint of coldness in his eyes. Wow. At the same time, the surrounding crowd was in an uproar. Qin Dandan's words had shocked them as well. This early primal core adept had actually dared to speak rudely to the most powerful adept of the Shenin sect, Zhongya, and even threatened to take revenge on the Shenin sect? Was he crazy? But, since he spoke rudely to Senior Zhongya 3 years ago, why didn't Senior Zhongya kill him then? I find it strange too. Logically speaking, with Senior Zhongya's power, killing a mid-primal core adept should be as easy as killing a chicken. Some people question this. 3 years ago, Master did not want to kill him. As Qi Ming and the rest looked at her in confusion, Qin Dandan gritted her teeth and said, at that time, Master hoped that I could kill him with my own power. Because he is my enemy. But what I did not expect was, in just 3 years he had advanced from the early Khanate stage to the mid-primal core stage. I, Qin Dandan, have asked myself, in this lifetime I will never have the chance to kill him with my own power. There was a hint of bitterness in Qin Dandan's voice as she spoke. Her gaze towards the young man became colder and colder. As soon as Qin Dandan's words came out, the crowd fell silent again. From the early Khanate stage to the mid-primal core stage in 3 years. Could there be such an adept on the planet of Ziyun? At that moment, besides the group of primal core adepts from the Divine Light sect, everyone else, including Qi Ming and the other senior members of the Shenin sect, had a look of doubt on their faces. No one dared to believe Qin Dandan's words. This was because Qin Dandan's words were too shocking and unbelievable. From the early Khanate stage to the mid-primal core stage in 3 years? Was it possible? Uncle Master, sect leader, senior brother. Qin Dandan's gaze swept across Qi Ming, Lu Yi and Bai Shitang, and she said seriously, this Zhou Donghuang's growth is too fast, too frightening. It's fortunate that he came today. If he was allowed to continue to grow, in a few years, no one in the Shenin sect would be able to stop him. Qin Dandan said. Qin Dandan. As soon as Qin Dandan finished speaking, Zhou Donghuang spoke. He looked at Qin Dandan with disdain, sarcasm and mostly mockery. What you mean by this is, right now there is someone in the Shenin sect who can stop me? The corner of Zhou Donghuang's mouth curled up in a mocking smile. As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, he attracted everyone's attention. He really came. The leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin, looked at the young man in white with a complicated expression and sighed softly. The Shenin sect is finished. The right guardian of the Divine Light sect, the Golden Essence Adept Ci Xian, shook his head. Unlike the group of primal core adepts from the Divine Light sect, the rest of the people present, upon hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, only thought that Zhou Donghuang had gone mad. A mid-primal core adept dared to spout such nonsense? If he was not crazy, then what was? Where did this lunatic come from? Challenging the Shenin sect like this, he's dead meat. Based on his personality, how did he survive until now? Whether it was the people from the Qinshu sect, the Tianwu sect or the Shueisha sect, from the Golden Essence Adepts to the early Khanate disciples, they all looked at Zhou Donghuang as if they were looking at a dead man. Little Gold, that Chindandan thinks that the people from the Shenin sect can defeat brother. In the distance, Yun Lu stood on Little Gold's back. She looked at Chindandan with a similarly cold gaze. Although this was the first time she had met Chindandan, she had heard many stories of Chindandan being ungrateful and betraying her mother and brother Zhou Donghuang. As for Chindandan, she wanted nothing more than to kill her to avenge her mother and brother. Sometimes ignorance is a good thing. At least before she passes away she will not be in despair for too long. Little Gold shook his head and looked at Chindandan as if he was looking at a fool, an idiot. Just as the group of people from the Shenin sect heard Zhou Donghuang's words, they were all stunned for a moment, and then they all smiled mockingly. Whoosh! On Zhou Donghuang's body, the solidified, milky white inner yuan was instantly engulfed by a majestic and vast silver flame, making him look like a god of silver flames. And this scene instantly caused the group of people to stare in shock. The primal core adepts of the Shenin sect surrounding Zhou Donghuang, including the golden essence adept Qi Ming, could not help but be stunned. They could not understand at all, how could a mid-primal core adept suddenly release the silver inner yuan of a late primal core adept? Furthermore, it was such a ridiculously thick inner yuan. Whoosh! Under the gaze of the crowd, Zhou Donghuang's figure flashed, and the silver flame pierced through the air, heading straight for Qi Ming, who had not had time to react. And just as Qi Ming regained his composure, a hand reached out from the silver flame. A hand reached out from the silver flames that were rushing towards him. There was an unfolded folding fan in the hand, and the ribs of the fan flickered with an extremely cold light. Whoosh! The silver flame brushed past Qi Ming's body, and the folding fan pierced through the air, bringing with it a sound like a knife cutting through the air. No! Almost at the same time that the crowd saw fresh blood splatter through the air and the head of the Shenin sect's golden core cultivator, Qi Ming, separated from his body and flew into the air, they heard Qi Ming's shrill and despairing cry. What the naked eye saw was traveling at the speed of light. And the speed of light was faster than the speed of sound. Above Qi Ming's head, which had flown into the air, was a pair of staring eyes filled with terror, and his blood-stained face was filled with despair. This scene caused everyone present to subconsciously hold their breaths. Qi Ming, the Shenin sect golden essence adept, was dead? Whoosh, 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 buzz, buzz, buzz. Before Qi Ming's head had even landed on the ground, and before the crowd had time to react, Zhou Donghuang had struck and killed all the Shenin sect primal core adepts who had surrounded him. One by one, heads flew into the air and fresh blood splattered everywhere. It was like a game of chess for Chindandan. End of this chapter. Chapter 202. Whoosh, whoosh. In the dead silence of the Feast of Ziyun, blood rained down, and the sound of it hitting the ground could be heard clearly. Chindandan's body and face were covered in blood, but now she stood rooted to the ground, looking dazedly at the young man standing in the air with his hands clasped behind his back. Apart from the group of primal core adepts from the Divine Light sect and Yun Lu, who were not surprised by this, the rest of the people present were completely shocked. Just now, the group of primal core adepts from the Shenin sect had moved to surround the young man. At that moment, they could clearly see that the body of the Shenin sect's great elder Qi Ming was surrounded by a golden halo, which was obviously the golden inner yuan unique to golden essence adepts. As for the Shenin sect leader Lu Yi, the Shenin sect head elder by Shi Tang, and another elder of the Shenin sect, their bodies were also surrounded by silver inner yuan. 3 late primal core adepts. As for the other 4 primal core adepts from the Shenin sect, 2 were surrounded by solid white inner yuan, and 2 were surrounded by a faint white fog. 2 mid-primal core adepts and 2 early primal core adepts. However, it was these people who had been killed by the young man in the blink of an eye. Thump, thump, thump. It was only when the bodies of the primal core adepts from the Shenin sect fell to the ground that the onlookers came back to their senses, their faces full of shock and fear. One by one, their gazes fell on the young man in white who was holding a folding fan like a scholar in the air, and they were all filled with fear. Golden essence adepts were killed by him so easily? And their heads were cut off? In the short span of 2 breaths, all the primal core adepts of the Shenin sect, from the golden essence adept Qi Ming and sect leader Lu Yi, down to 2 mid-primal core elders and 2 early primal core disciples, are all dead? My God! Who exactly is he? With just the silver inner yuan unique to late primal core adepts, he managed to kill 8 primal core adepts from the Shenin sect. In front of him, the golden essence adepts and early primal core adepts are no different, and they were all decapitated by him with just one move. Waves of gasps could be heard coming from the crowd at the Feast of Ziyun. Now, the members of the other three major sects of Ziyun who had been gloating over Zhou Donghuang's misfortune, whether they were from the Celestial Sect, the Thousand-Year Sect, or the Shueisha Sect, were all pale with fright. Even the Golden Core cultivators in their sects were looking at the young man standing with his hands behind his back in the air with fear in their eyes. They did not think that the young man had killed the Golden Core cultivator of the Shenin sect with a single blow because of carelessness. Just now, when the young man moved, his speed had already surpassed theirs. Moreover, the power of the attack displayed by the young man with the folding fan was so great that even if they attacked with all their strength, they wouldn't be able to display even half of its power. Terrifying. It was too terrifying. Although his true essence is only the silver-colored true essence of a silver core cultivator, its density is at least twice that of an ordinary silver core cultivator. It's equivalent to the power of 3 or more silver core cultivators perfectly fusing together. This in itself is already no weaker than a core formation cultivator. The power of a golden core cultivator's true essence is only slightly more than twice that of a silver core cultivator's true essence. That folding fan of his is definitely a spirit weapon. Furthermore, it's not an ordinary spirit weapon. At this moment, the golden core cultivators of the 4 major sects, including the golden core cultivator of the Divine Light sect, all looked at the folding fan in the young man's hands with heated gazes. However, that was all. Although their gazes were heated, they did not contain any greed. It was not that they did not want this folding fan, but they knew that even if they wanted it, they would not be able to. With the young man's power, if they dared to be greedy, they would end up like the golden core cultivator of the Shenin sect, Qi Ming. No, a scream filled with disbelief rang out. It was Qin Dandan who, after regaining her senses, sat paralyzed on the ground. She kept shaking her head, her eyes filled with disbelief. No. Impossible. Impossible. How could he have such power? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. I must be dreaming. I must be dreaming. Yes, I'm dreaming. I'm definitely dreaming. Qin Dandan sat paralyzed on the ground, looking at the glaring fresh blood all around her. Her entire body trembled uncontrollably. The fresh blood continuously attacked her pupils, causing her to feel as if her heart was about to explode. Did she really think that she was dreaming? No. When she saw Zhou Donghuang standing in the air and becoming a primal core adept, she had already confirmed that she was not dreaming. Now, saying that she was dreaming was just her way of consoling herself. She was deeply afraid that she would not be able to take it and would be devastated or even die. Just as the atmosphere at the scene became oppressive. Young man, I never thought that in just 3 short years, you would actually have the power to kill a late primal core elder of the Shenin sect. An old voice, full of energy and full of violence, rang out from afar. Although the voice was far away, it had a frightening penetrating power. It passed through the air and reached the scene of the Feast of Ziyun, entering everyone's ears. Before the person arrived, the voice arrived first. Teacher. Hearing this voice, Qin Dandan, who had been paralyzed on the ground, suddenly stood up as if she had been injected with adrenaline, her face full of excitement. However, after a moment, the voices around her caused her to fall back to the ground. Qin Dandan called the owner of this voice teacher? The other golden essence adept of the Shenin sect, the strongest in the Shenin sect, Zhongya? This young man could even kill the golden essence adept of the Shenin sect, Qi Ming? Even if Zhongya's power is stronger than Qi Ming, he can't be that much stronger, right? He can't possibly be a match for this young man. This young man's power, even if he is not as strong as a Dharma adept, is definitely enough to crush anyone below that level. Including the people of the 4 great sects of Ziyun as well as the surviving Khanate adepts of the Shenin sect, no one present felt that the golden essence adept of the Shenin sect, Zhongya, had the ability to defeat Zhou Donghuang. Even Qin Dandan felt the same way. Whoosh, whoosh. In the quiet environment of the Feast of Ziyun, when the gray figure appeared, the sound was exceptionally loud, and his robes fluttered in the wind. The owner of the gray figure was an old man dressed in a long gray robe. Zhou Donghuang recognized him at first glance. It was the golden essence adept who had appeared in the Valley of the Medicine Masters 3 years ago, the elder of the Shenin sect, Zhongya. When he realized that Zhongya looked much younger than he had 3 years ago, Zhou Donghuang was stunned for a moment before regaining his composure. His eyes flashed a few times. Young man, 3 years ago I was afraid that killing you would affect my progress to the Dharma stage, so I did not kill you. I never thought that 3 years later, you would dare to come knocking on my door. Zhongya looked at Zhou Donghuang coldly, and his tone was emotionless. Since you are here you can leave your life here. Teacher. Almost as soon as Zhongye finished speaking, Chindandan hurriedly shouted, "Leave quickly! Leave quickly! Uncle Master Qi Ming, the sect leader, and big brother have all been killed by him. When you reach the Dharma stage, it won't be too late to kill Zhou Donghuang to avenge them." Now, Chindandan could only hope that her teacher would leave quickly and wait until he reached the Dharma stage to seek revenge on Zhou Donghuang. Based on the strength that Zhou Donghuang had displayed today, if her teacher reached the Dharma stage, he would definitely not be a match for Zhou Donghuang. Hearing Chindandan's words, Zhongye's expression changed. At the same time he looked down and saw that on the high platform of the Feast of Ziyun, other than his disciple Chindandan, who was sitting there paralyzed, there were more than 10 other corpses. These corpses were either headless bodies or heads that had been separated from the body. Among them was his senior disciple, the head elder of the Shenin sect, Bai Shitang, and his junior, the Shenin sect's grand elder Qi Ming, as well as the Shenin sect leader Lu Yi. Qi Ming? Regarding the deaths of Bai Shitang and Lu Yi, Zhongye only felt anger. However, Qi Ming's death was unbelievable to him. Qi Ming was a golden essence adept after all. But now he had died here? When Zhongye looked at Zhou Donghuang, who was standing not too far away from him, his eyes were filled with disbelief. "You're just a late primal core adept, and yet you're able to kill a golden essence adept?" Zhou Donghuang looked at Zhongye calmly and said casually, 3 years ago I told you, Zhongye took Chindandan away, which means that you've brought the entire Shenin sect with you, Zhou Donghuang. Today I, Zhou Donghuang, am here to end this." As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, everyone present realized that the reason why the young man in white had appeared here and killed the people of the Shenin sect was all because of Chindandan. Femme fatale. At this moment, when many people looked at Chindandan again, this thought popped into their minds. Ha! Zhongye laughed without warning, and his laughter grew louder and louder. After a while, under the shocked gazes of the crowd, he stopped laughing. After he stopped laughing, Zhongye's gaze was like lightning as he laughed coldly. "Young man, if you had made your move 3 days ago, you might have been able to kill me, destroy the Shenin sect, and end your so-called karma. But you waited until today to make your move. You are destined to be dreaming." As soon as Zhongye finished speaking, a strong aura swept out from Zhongye's body, followed by a black force that howled out from his body. In the blink of an eye, a 10-foot-tall shadow rose from Zhongye's body. It was the shadow of a black raven, the size of a small hill. It stood upright in the air. Around this tall black crow shadow, there seemed to be a black halo that flowed like water, emitting waves of terrifying aura. Although they were far away, many of the spectators who were of a lower level of training could still feel the pressure of this aura, causing their faces to turn red, and some of them even began to bleed from their orifices. This is Dharma power? Many people's eyes narrowed. End of this chapter. Chapter 203. No wonder I felt that something was wrong just now. Senior Zhongye of the Shenin sect, as a golden essence adept, why is there no golden inner yuan surrounding him when he stands in the air? It turns out that he has already entered the Dharma stage. An elder of the 1,000-year sect sighed and said, "The Dharma stage returns to its natural state, and the inner yuan becomes formless. Dharma, our planet of Ziyun has produced a third Dharma adept?" At this moment, other than the group of Shenin sect members who were overjoyed, the members of the other 4 sects had complicated looks on their faces. The first Dharma adept in the history of the planet of Ziyun was from the Shenin sect. This was something that the other 4 sects did not want to see. That year, the first Dharma adept in the history of the planet of Ziyun was from the Tianwu sect. At that time, the Dharma adept of the Tianwu sect wanted to destroy the other 4 sects before he left the planet of Ziyun, so that the Tianwu sect could unify the planet of Ziyun. As the only Dharma adept in the planet of Ziyun, the Dharma adept of the Tianwu sect was invincible in the planet of Ziyun. However, in the end, the other 4 sects joined forces, causing the Tianwu sect to hesitate and not dare to destroy them. At that time, the 4 sects had made a statement. If the Dharma adept of the Tianwu sect dared to attack again, the primal core adepts of the 4 sects would abandon their sects, leave the planet of Ziyun, and escape into the stars to seek revenge and slaughter the elders and disciples of the Tianwu sect. So what if the Tianwu sect had a Dharma adept? Could it be that the group of elders and disciples of the Tianwu sect could hide in the Tianwu sect forever and be protected by the Dharma adept? If anyone came out, we would kill them. With the determination of the 4 sects, the Dharma adept of the Tianwu sect finally gave up on the idea of destroying the other 4 sects and unifying the planet of Ziyun. Furthermore, the Dharma adept of the Tianwu sect was determined to leave the planet of Ziyun. Naturally, he could not leave any hidden dangers for the Tianwu sect before he left. Therefore, when the Xinguang sect had the second Dharma adept in the history of the planet of Ziyun, although the other 4 sects were wary, they did not panic. Because they knew that the Xinguang sect would not dare to act recklessly, just like the Tianwu sect. Go! Go! The Golden Essence adepts of the Divine Light sect, the Thousand-Year sect, the Tianwu sect, and the Shueisha sect, who were seated in the spectator stands, flew up one after another and flew off in different directions at an extremely fast speed. The reason why the Golden Essence adepts of the 4 main sects had left was because they were worried that they would be killed by the Xianin sect's elder Zhongye, who had already entered the Dharma stage. On top of that, they had to pass on the news of Zhongye's breakthrough back to their respective sects, as well as make preparations to guard against Zhongye. This was to prevent Zhongye from destroying their sects one by one in the future. The other members of the 4 sects, led by their respective sect masters, stayed to watch the show. As long as the Golden Essence adepts left, even if Zhongye had already entered the Dharma stage, he would not dare to touch them. Zhongye naturally saw the Golden Essence adepts of the 4 major sects leaving, and he could guess what they were thinking. However, he did not stop them. Although, if he tried to stop them, he could kill all 4 Golden Core cultivators in one fell swoop. However, if he did that, the white-clothed young man would definitely be able to escape. Once the young man escaped and made a comeback in the future, it would be the doomsday of the Xianin sect. In 3 years' time, the early Khanate adept, who was like an ant in his eyes, had not only entered the late primal core stage and became a silver essence adept, he even had the ability to kill the golden essence adept of the Xianin sect, Qi Ming. Such an existence was too much of a threat to the Xianin sect. Therefore, he could only watch as the golden essence adepts of the 4 major sects left and escaped. That is, Dharma. At the same time, a group of people who had been shocked by the Dharma that had appeared on Zhongye's body recovered one after another, and a look of shock appeared on their faces. Dharma adept. To them, this was a legendary existence. And today they had personally witnessed a Dharma adept reveal his Dharma. I really did not expect that there would be so many surprises at the Feast of Ziyun this time. First, a young man appeared out of nowhere and killed the 8 primal core adepts led by the golden essence adept of the Xianin sect within 2 breaths. Then, Elder Zhongye of the Xianin sect appeared and revealed his Dharma power. The golden essence adepts of the 4 major sects all took the opportunity to escape. It looks like they were also worried that Elder Zhongye, who had entered the Dharma stage, would attack them. I originally thought that even if Elder Zhongye came, it would be useless, but I did not expect him to already be a Dharma adept. Now it looks like the unlucky one is not Elder Zhongye, but this young man. He probably did not even dream that Elder Zhongye had already entered the Dharma stage. From what Elder Zhongye said, he must have just entered the Dharma stage 2 days ago. The onlookers all stared at Zhongye with sparkling eyes, their faces filled with excitement at the same time. Dharma adept. If it had been in the past, they would not have dared to dream that they would one day be able to see a Dharma adept. Not only would they be able to brag about it for the rest of their lives, but they could also let their descendants continue to brag about it. Our ancestors had once seen a Dharma adept with their own eyes. Teacher, has become a Dharma adept? Qin Dandan regained her composure and stood up once again. This time, her snake-like waist was straight as she stared at Zhongye with shining eyes. At the same time, she bowed and congratulated him. Congratulations, teacher, for achieving your wish and entering the Dharma stage. It was obvious that Qin Dandan did not know that Zhongye had entered the Dharma stage beforehand. Zhongye looked at Qin Dandan with a gentle gaze. For him to be able to enter the Dharma stage, his disciple was the main reason. Just as he had said 3 years ago when he came to the Valley of the Medicine Masters, he wanted to enter the Dharma stage and he needed to have a clear mind. If he wanted to save Qin Dandan's life and take her as his disciple, he had to do it. The more clear his mind was, the higher his chances of entering the Dharma stage. 2 days ago he had successfully entered the Dharma stage, and his lifespan had been extended by 300 years. Hence he looked much younger than before. Now he could live for another 300 years. After breaking through 2 days ago, Zhongye had stayed in his room to adapt to his new training. Only today, when a late primal core elder of the Xianin sect hurriedly came to find him to pass on a message to Zhou Donghuang, did he come out. As soon as he came out, he came straight here. Zhou Donghuang. When she looked at the young man dressed in white again, Qin Dandan's eyes lit up as if she had been reborn. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent. You probably never dreamed that my teacher, ancestor Zhongya, had already entered the Dharma stage, right? I have to admit that your level of training is astonishing, and it can even be said to be nature-defying. Now that you are so strong, it is difficult to find a match for anyone below the Dharma stage. But, it is a pity that you are unlucky to have met a teacher who has already become a Dharma adept. As she spoke, Qin Dandan looked at Zhongya again. Teacher, since you have already entered the Dharma stage, there is no need to think that lowering your status to kill Zhou Donghuang will affect your desire to enter the Dharma stage. Zhongya said calmly, even if I have not entered the Dharma stage with his current strength, even if I wanted to kill him, it would not affect my desire to enter the Dharma stage. Of course, if I had not entered the Dharma stage, I would definitely not be a match for him now. When Zhongya looked at Zhou Donghuang again, he smiled sinisterly. Kid, didn't you want to end the karma between me and the Xianin sect? Come on. I want to see how a special silver essence adept like you, who can kill a golden essence adept, can fight against a Dharma adept like me. As he spoke, Zhongya's eyes were filled with mockery and disdain. Who would have thought that you would actually enter the Dharma stage? Zhou Donghuang looked at Zhongya, his eyes calm and his face expressionless. When Zhongya had first appeared, Zhou Donghuang had already noticed that there was no golden inner yuan surrounding Zhongya's body. Coupled with Zhongya's youthful appearance, it was not difficult to guess that Zhongya had already entered the Dharma stage and become a Dharma adept. As the saying goes, the higher you stand, the harder you fall. By saving Qin Dandan and entering the Dharma stage, you, Zhongya, have lived for another 3 years. If you had not saved Qin Dandan, even if you had no hope of entering the Dharma stage from today onwards, you, Zhongya, would have lived for a few more years. Zhou Donghuang shook his head lightly. What a pity, what a pity. But then again, a few years of your life in exchange for a few days of training in the Dharma stage is worth it for you. Following Zhou Donghuang's words, Zhongya and Qin Dandan were stunned, and the entire crowd once again fell silent. Zhou Donghuang's words could be understood by anyone who was not a fool. What he meant was, even if Zhongya had entered the Dharma stage, he would definitely die today. Zhongya is already a Dharma adept. Does he really have the confidence to kill Zhongya? After seeing Zhongya's Dharma power, the leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin, felt that Zhou Donghuang was doomed. But now Zhou Donghuang's attitude had shaken his confidence. Could Zhou Donghuang really kill Zhongya, who was already a Dharma adept? Is he crazy? Although his abilities are not bad, the difference between a primal core adept and a Dharma adept is like a chasm. To kill a Dharma adept who is a whole stage above him? I'm afraid he's still dreaming. Idiot. Upon hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, the leaders of the Thousand-Year sect, Tianwu sect, and Shueisha sect all shook their heads as they spoke. This was especially so for the leaders of the Thousand-Year sect and Shueisha sect. They looked at Zhou Donghuang as if they were looking at a madman, a fool, and an idiot. Brother. Yun Lu stood on the back of the golden-crowned eagle, Little Gold. The gloominess on her face had been swept away, and her eyes were shining. Just now, when she saw Zhongya's Dharma power, she had been worried that her brother would not be a match for Zhongya. Now, hearing her brother's confident words, she was not worried at all. Crazy. Even Little Gold could not believe that his young master was not even afraid of a Dharma adept. As for the spectators, they did not think that the young man had a chance of winning either. After all, the young man was facing the third Dharma adept in the history of Ziyun in the past 1,000 years. End of this chapter. Chapter 204. Zhou Donghuang, you're already at death's door and you still dare to boast. Qin Dandan laughed coldly after regaining her composure. She did not think that Zhou Donghuang would be able to defeat her teacher, Zhongya. If her teacher, Zhongya, was still the golden essence adept of the past, she did not think that her teacher, Zhongya, would be a match for Zhou Donghuang, based on the way that Zhou Donghuang had killed the other golden essence adept of the Xianin sect, Qi Ming. However, Zhongya was now a Dharma adept. The power of a Dharma adept was not something that a primal core adept could compare to. In front of a Dharma adept, a golden essence adept was not much different from an early primal core adept. They could be easily killed. Rascal, do you really think that, just because you killed my junior brother, Qi Ming, you can fight me? Zhongya looked at Zhou Donghuang with a mocking smile. Then he took a step forward, and the 3-meter-tall black raven that rose from his body also flapped its wings. Instantly. Whoosh, whoosh. As the black raven flapped its wings, a strong gust of wind rose in the feast of Ziyun. Some of the onlookers with lower levels of practice were even blown back by the strong wind. In the air, many flying beasts were also blown away by the wind. As for Zhou Donghuang, his robe was also blown by the wind, like a white flame was burning. Today I will show you the power of the third Dharma adept in the history of Ziyun. As soon as Zhongye finished speaking, his entire body flew forward. When the crowd heard Zhongye's words, they could not take their eyes off him. More accurately, they were looking at the 3-meter-tall black raven that had risen from Zhongye's body. A 3-meter-tall Dharma was the symbol of an early Dharma adept. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Zhongye flew forward, and the black raven on his body flapped its wings. As if it had turned into a flash of light, it flew towards Zhou Donghuang. Is this the power of a Dharma adept? The power of a Dharma adept is above the Dharma formed from inner yuan. Even the Dharma formed by an early Dharma adept can easily defeat the golden inner yuan of a golden essence adept. This Zhou Donghuang is going to be unlucky. The black raven Dharma power flew out and swooped down majestically. Its huge body blocked out the sun as it followed Zhongye to attack Zhou Donghuang. Most of the onlookers looked at Zhou Donghuang with pity in their eyes. In their eyes, although Zhou Donghuang's abilities were not bad, he was definitely no match for Zhongye. Die. Die. Qin Dandan had a crazed look in her eyes as she laughed coldly in her heart. Zhou Donghuang, when you die, I will return to the 16 countries of the East Valley, kill your mother, and send her to reunite with you. The group of Xiantian cultivators from the Shenin sect who had survived were all gloating at the scene before them. If you, Zhongye, were one of those supreme sects or star clans with my current abilities, I would naturally be no match for you. It's a pity that you, Zhongye, are merely a Dharma adept from a low-level training planet. You simply cannot unleash the true battle power of a Dharma adept. Faced with the menacing Zhongye, Zhou Donghuang laughed in disdain. In the next moment he raised his hand, and the 18 blades of the fan in his hand instantly separated. Silver light surrounded his body, as if 18 dragons were swimming around the 18 blades of the fan. Today I, Zhou Donghuang, will make you, Zhongye, the shortest living Dharma adept in the history of the Ziyun planet. Zhou Donghuang's voice was indifferent as he spoke. With a shake of his body, the 18 blades of the fan in front of him instantly transformed into 18 arrows that shot towards Zhongye. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As the 18 blades of the fan flew through the air, it was as if they had transformed into 18 rays of light that carried an awe-inspiring aura as they rushed towards the Black Crow Dharma power. What a strong inner yuan. As soon as Zhou Donghuang made his move, Zhongye realized how terrifying his inner yuan was. Compared to before he had become a Dharma adept, his inner yuan was at least twice as strong. Luckily I have become a Dharma adept. Otherwise I would definitely die today. Zhongye secretly rejoiced. He is just a silver essence adept, how can he have such great power? The fan in his hand seems to have doubled his inner yuan. Is it an ultimate primal core spirit weapon? As he guessed that the fan in Zhou Donghuang's hand was an ultimate primal core spirit weapon, Zhongye's heart skipped a beat. This was too shocking for him. Young lad, I did not expect your inner yuan to be this strong, however, this level of inner yuan is not enough to go against me, a Dharma adept. Taking a deep breath, Zhongye temporarily suppressed the shock in his heart as he looked at Zhou Donghuang, who was approaching him along with the 18 blades of the fan. Is that so? Zhou Donghuang laughed lightly. With a shake of his body, his entire person was like a ghost as he dashed forward. In the blink of an eye, he had brushed past the 18 blades of the fan. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. As the 18 blades of the fan brushed past Zhou Donghuang, not only did the silver light on their bodies increase, but most of the blades even changed their direction of travel. In the blink of an eye, the 18 wings of the fan surrounded Zhongye from all directions. Then they whizzed towards Zhongye, like 18 silver meteors in the starry sky, attacking a planet from all angles. What an unnecessary move. Zhongye sneered in disdain. Do you think that your attack can deal with the Dharma formed by my vital energy? As soon as Zhongye finished speaking, the black raven Dharma power on his body let out a shrill and ear-piercing shriek. The sound waves swept out and instantly ruptured the eardrums of the Khanate adepts present. The chi-gathering adepts who were closer to it started bleeding from their orifices, and some of them even fell to the ground and died. Seeing this, the expressions of the people present changed. Boom. Kaboom. The aura of the black raven Dharma power exploded, and the rolling waves of air spread out in all directions. Like a shockwave, it destroyed the high stage of the Feast of Ziyun. Qin Dandan, who was still on the high stage, was thrown into the air and spat out a mouthful of blood. Then, with a look of fear on her face, she tried to escape. Run. Get away from me. Don't get caught in the crossfire. Apart from the people of the four main sects who were still in the spectator stands, the rest of the people quickly left the Feast of Ziyun. Although the people of the four main sects did not leave, a group of primal core adepts also made their moves. Their inner yuan swept out and formed a layer of defense to protect the Khanate adepts of their own sections. After all, it was only the remnant power of the Black Raven Dharma power, and their inner yuan was barely enough to withstand it. Is this the power of a Dharma adept? That Zhou Donghuang is dead meat. Qin Dandan ran to watch from afar. Although she was in a sorry state, when she looked up again she was still excited, as if she could already see the scene of Zhou Donghuang dying at the hands of Zhongye. Dharma adepts, after forming their Dharma power, need to refine their Dharma power so that it does not have any flaws. As the 18 blades of the fan turned into a sword-like attack and landed on the body of the Black Raven Dharma power, Zhou Donghuang's calm voice instantly rang out. If I'm not wrong, you not only have you not refined your Dharma power, but you have also not confirmed the flaws of your Dharma power, right? As soon as Zhou Donghuang's words reached Zhongye's ears, Zhongye furrowed his eyebrows for a moment before relaxing them again. He laughed coldly and said, "Young man, you don't have to lie to me. If my Dharma power has any flaws, you can attack it." Zhongye obviously did not believe Zhou Donghuang's words. Bang, bang. At the same time, Zhou Donghuang's fan split apart, and the 18 blades of the fan, carrying with them a strong silver inner yuan, all landed on the body of the Black Raven Dharma power on Zhongye's body. This wave of attacks was easily blocked by the Black Raven Dharma power with a flap of its wings. As for the remaining 6 rays of silver light, they landed on the body of the Black Raven Dharma power. 4 of them did not cause any damage to the Black Raven Dharma power, but the other 2, once they landed on the body of the Black Raven Dharma power, caused it to let out a shrill cry. Not good. As soon as he heard the cry of the Black Raven Dharma power, Zhongye felt a rebounding force from the Black Raven Dharma power back into his body, causing the blood in his body to churn. A moment later, his internal organs were shaken to the point where they trembled. Wah! Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the Black Raven Dharma power had been reduced from a height of 10 feet to a height of 5 feet. Zhongye also spat out a mouthful of blood, and his face turned as white as a sheet. His entire body seemed to have aged in that instant. What a disgrace to the Dharma adepts. As Zhongye spat out blood and was injured, Zhou Donghuang had already arrived near Zhongye. With a wave of his hand, the 18 blades of the fan returned to his hand and reformed into a fan. I thought that it would be good enough if I could hit one of your Dharma power's weaknesses. I never thought that I would hit 2 of them. Weak. Too weak. The silver flames on Zhou Donghuang's body exploded, and in an instant, it was as if he had transformed into a ball of silver flames that flew towards the heavily injured Zhongye. With only the 5-foot-tall Black Raven Dharma power left, Zhou Donghuang was not afraid even if he were to face it head-on. How is this possible? Zhongye had never dreamed that in the first round of battle, he would be severely injured by his opponent. Furthermore, his opponent's attacks were far weaker than his Dharma powers. Could it be that my Dharma power really has a weakness? As he thought about this, Zhongye realized that Zhou Donghuang was once again charging towards him. This time he was no longer relying on the spirit weapon in his hand, but was directly wielding it. Even if I am injured, I can still use half of my full strength. It is more than enough to kill you. Zhongye's face turned cold, and the 5-foot-tall Black Raven Dharma power on his body retracted. Around his body, a layer of black light formed, like a layer of black armor. Dharma armor. This was also a technique used by Dharma adepts. It allowed their Dharma power to form a layer of defense around their body, and it could also allow the inner yuan within their body to break out of their body at the fastest speed possible. Of course, most Dharma adepts would use their Dharma power to crush their opponents with brute force. Very few people would use Dharma armor. However, Zhou Donghuang's technique had frightened Zhongye, and he was deeply afraid that Zhou Donghuang would once again attack the weakness of his Dharma power. End of this chapter. Chapter 205. Whoosh. Zhongye's entire body was surrounded by a black glow, and his inner yuan burst out of his body like a black flame. It was as if he had transformed into a majestic demon god. Then, facing the oncoming Zhou Donghuang, Zhongye's hands trembled. His left hand struck out and his right hand struck out like a knife. It was as if he wanted to kill Zhou Donghuang after he had forced him back. Do you think that by transforming your Dharma power into armor, you can cover up the weakness of your Dharma power? Facing the oncoming Zhongye, Zhou Donghuang's lips curled into a mocking smile. Then, the hand that was holding the fan shook violently, and the fan flew out of his hand. Whoosh! The fan flew through the air, and almost brushed past Zhongye's left palm, causing Zhongye's palm to miss. At the same time, Zhou Donghuang's body also brushed past Zhongye's palm, and at the same time he reached out his hand and grabbed the fan back. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Even Zhongye himself did not expect Zhou Donghuang to be able to react in such a short period of time and dodge his left palm. His left palm was aimed at the wrist of Zhou Donghuang's hand that was holding the folding fan, not at the folding fan. What a terrifying reaction speed. Zhongye's heart trembled. This was the first time he had met such a terrifying person. It was as if Zhou Donghuang was always able to predict his opponent's movements and gain the upper hand. It was as if he was not fighting with a 20-year-old youth, but an old monster who had been through hundreds of battles. But, so what if he dodged my palm? My palm blade can easily stop him. Zhongye's right palm blade whistled through the air, forming a long and narrow black blade that slashed towards Zhou Donghuang's waist. The sound of the blade was ear-piercing, and it struck fear into everyone's hearts. If he doesn't dodge, he will definitely die. Zhongye's eyes narrowed, and his face revealed a hint of madness. As for me, at most I will suffer some light injuries. Just as the black blade was about to split Zhou Donghuang's body into two, at the critical moment, the lower half of Zhou Donghuang's body shone with a silver light, and the lower half of his body strangely folded together with his upper body. It was as if he had no bones and could be folded at will. This had completely overturned Zhongye's and everyone else's understanding of the human body. The human body could be used like this? Buzz. Zhongye's right hand was like a knife, and after his left hand had missed, his palm also missed. How is this possible? Seeing how Zhou Donghuang had evaded his confident strike, Zhongye's expression changed, and cold sweat broke out on his forehead. At the same time, he hurriedly mobilized the remaining energy in his body, wanting to launch another attack. However, at this moment, the lower half of Zhou Donghuang's body, which had been folded from the waist down, straightened up, and his entire body borrowed the force of the straightening and shot towards Zhongye like an arrow released from a bow. Not good. Hurriedly, Zhongye activated the remaining true origin in his body with all his might, turning it into a hole, causing the black armor on the surface of his body to become darker and darker. Buzz. Faced with Zhou Donghuang's folding fan, Zhongye could feel the silver light emanating from the folding fan. Zhongye clasped his hands together and pushed them out, as if intending to forcefully block Zhou Donghuang's attack. Whoosh! In the blink of an eye, Zhou Donghuang's folding fan flew through the air, bringing with it a sharp silver light. It met with Zhongye's clasped hands and was blocked. Young man, the power of a Dharma adept is far beyond your imagination. After blocking Zhou Donghuang's attack, Zhongye grinned and said, "Next I will give you a quick death. To be able to become the first revenant that I, Zhongye, have ever killed after becoming a Dharma adept, you will not have wasted your life." At this moment, Zhongye seemed to have won. Whoosh! Zhou Donghuang sneered, and at the same time his right hand, which was holding onto the folding fan, shook violently. In that instant, Zhongye's heart had a bad premonition. With a shake of his hands, he tried to grab the folding fan in Zhou Donghuang's hands. However, the folding fan in Zhou Donghuang's hands was like a loach, slippery and slippery. No matter how hard Zhongye tried to grab it, it easily escaped from Zhongye's hands. Oh! Almost at the same time that the folding fan escaped from Zhongye's hands, Zhongye seemed to realize something. His face changed and at the same time he let out a pained scream. Whoosh! The folding fan that escaped from Zhongye's hands was like a wild beast that had escaped from its cage. It was like a fish in the sea, a bird in the sky, and a silver light flashed in the air. Whoosh! Fresh blood splattered everywhere. Whoosh! A head flew into the sky. Zhongye had followed in the footsteps of the primal core adepts of the Shenin sect who had died at the hands of Zhou Donghuang. On the 10th of October 1233 of the Ziyun era, after 3 years, Zhou Donghuang at the Feast of Ziyun killed the Shenin sect elder, Zhongye, who had already entered the Dharma stage in front of all the guests of the Ziyun planet. This was to settle the karma that Zhongye had formed with Zhou Donghuang in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. Because of this, Zhongye became the shortest-lived Dharma adept in the history of the Ziyun planet. He had not even entered the Dharma stage for 3 days and he was already killed. The battle between Zhou Donghuang and Zhongye was extremely fast. Everyone present either did not see it clearly, or they did not dare to be distracted, afraid that they would miss out on any exciting scenes. Hence, from the start of the battle until the end, the entire feast of Ziyun was extremely quiet. Seeing Zhong Ye's head fly into the sky, he had been killed. Although the entire crowd remained silent, the sound of Zhong Ye's body hitting the ground still caused their hearts to tremble. The third Dharma adept in the history of the Ziyun planet in the past 1,000 years had died just like that? No, impossible. Impossible. Among the crowd of people who had been shocked by Zhong Ye's death, Qin Dandan was the first to regain her senses. Her face was filled with shock and disbelief, and her eyes were filled with disbelief. Brother has won. On the back of the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold, Yun Lu's face was flushed with excitement, and Little Gold's eyes were also filled with excitement. So what if he was a Dharma adept? He had still been killed by its young master, Qin Dandan. It was only when Zhou Donghuang's voice rang out again that the crowd of people present finally regained their senses. They all gasped, and the way they looked at Zhou Donghuang was completely different. Other than fear, there was only fear. Although this young man in snow-white robes was only a silver core cultivator, his strength had already reached a shocking level. Golden essence adepts could be easily killed by him. Dharma adepts could also be easily killed by him. Who is he? Where did this demon come from? Is this demon really from the Ziyun planet? As the crowd of people looked at Zhou Donghuang in fear, Zhou Donghuang had already stepped into the air above where Qin Dandan was. He looked down at Qin Dandan, his face expressionless. When Zhou Donghuang stared at Qin Dandan, the crowd of people who were originally standing beside Qin Dandan were all frightened into scattering in all directions. They kept their distance from Qin Dandan, afraid that they would be implicated. Zhou Donghuang, looking up at the young man in white before her, Qin Dandan's face was filled with despair. She had never thought that even with the Shenin sect as her backing, she would still not be able to defeat him in the end. The martial invalid of the past was now standing at the pinnacle of the Ziyun planet. She was very clear. After today's battle, the young man before her had already reached the pinnacle of the Ziyun planet. Even the other 4 sects of the Ziyun planet could only bow to him and not dare to offend him. Did she regret it? Of course she did. If she had not betrayed her adoptive mother and the person before her because of her own selfish desires, she might have already been married to him under her adoptive mother's orders. And she, Qin Dandan, could have relied on the glory of the person before her to become the most powerful person in the entire Ziyun planet. Unfortunately, one wrong step led to many wrong steps. I've already said what I have to say 3 years ago. I've already asked what I have to ask 3 years ago. Zhou Donghuang looked down at Qin Dandan, his lips curling in a mocking smile. Before you die, do you have anything to say, Qin Dandan? Qin Dandan took a deep breath. Winner takes all. I have nothing to say. 3 years ago, Qin Dandan knew that the person before her would not let her off. He would definitely kill her. So today, although she really wanted to live, even if it was just to live, she knew that the other party would not give her a chance. She would die standing and she would die kneeling. Why shouldn't she die standing? Since that is the case, you may go. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, the silver flames on Zhou Donghuang's body left his body and formed a huge palm print in the air, crashing down on Qin Dandan's head. Bang! A loud sound rang out, the ground shook and dust filled the air. The crowd felt their scalps go numb. When the dust settled, a huge palm print appeared where Qin Dandan had been standing. Within the palm print, there was blood everywhere, as well as some remnants of her dress and hair. Qin Dandan, who should have died in the Valley of the Medicine Masters 3 years ago, had finally died after living for 3 more years. However, 3 years later, there were many more people who had died with Qin Dandan. After Qin Dandan's death, the crowd was still silent. Everyone present looked up at the white figure in the air, not daring to breathe too loudly. They were deeply afraid that if they opened their mouths and broke the silence, they would anger the other party. Lord Tuajin. Zhou Donghuang turned around and looked at the middle-aged monk sitting in the first row of the audience where the people of the Divine Light sect were. He said calmly, "What do you think?" As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, everyone present could not make heads or tails of his words. The Divine Light sect will obey Lord Donghuang's orders. Almost as soon as Zhou Donghuang finished speaking, the Divine Light sect leader, Tuajin, immediately stood up and bowed respectfully in response. The next moment, under the confused gazes of the crowd, Tuajin gave the order, and the few golden essence adepts of the Divine Light sect rushed towards the remaining Khanate adepts of the Shenin sect. Like wolves entering a flock of sheep, in the blink of an eye, the Khanate adepts of the Shenin sect were all killed. This scene also stunned everyone present. End of this chapter. Chapter 206. The leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin, had ordered the Divine Light sect to kill the Shenin sect disciples. This was something that no one present had expected, and it made them even more confused. How had the people of the Divine Light sect suddenly become the pawns of this young man in white? Leader Tuajin. After the primal core adepts of the Divine Light sect had killed all the Khanate adepts of the Shenin sect like wolves in a flock of sheep, Zhou Donghuang greeted the leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin. At the same time, his gaze swept across the spectator stands where the Qianxiu sect, the Shueisha sect, and the Qianwu sect were seated. Just now, someone seemed to have spoken rudely to me. As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, the faces of the leaders of the three sects changed. Just as the leaders of the three major sects rose from their seats and were about to apologize, Zhou Donghuang spoke first. Each of the three sects will compensate me 100,000 spirit stones as compensation for the psychological damage I have suffered. I want to see the spirit stones before 1234 of the Ziyun era. If any of the sects do not cooperate, Leader Tuajin, please let me know. I, Zhou Donghuang, will personally go and collect them. I will also find their golden essence adepts to spar with. As soon as he said this, a cold light flashed in Zhou Donghuang's eyes, causing the faces of the leaders of the three sects to change. 100,000 spirit stones? Furthermore, if the three sects did not cooperate, this young man would personally come to them? Find a golden essence adept to spar with? The Shenin sect's golden essence adept, Qi Ming, had been killed in an instant, and he had even killed a Dharma adept. The golden essence adepts of the three sects were definitely no match for him. Spar? Who would believe that? He was clearly threatening them. If they dared not pay the spirit stones, he would kill the golden essence adepts of the sects behind them as interest. Yes, Lord Donghuang. Tuajin hurriedly replied as he looked at the leaders of the three sections. 3 leaders, when you return, bring the spirit stones to the Divine Light sect. Remember, send them before 1234 of the Ziyun era. Tuajin reminded them intentionally. At the same time, Tuajin was somewhat relieved. Fortunately, the Divine Light sect had long known how terrifying the young man before them was. Otherwise, it would not only be the three sects who would be in trouble, but the Divine Light sect as well. My lord. Hu Qingxua, the sect leader of the Shueisha sect, looked at Zhou Donghuang with an ugly expression. He spoke first. Just now my words offended you. I can apologize and compensate you with some spirit stones. But isn't 100,000 spirit stones too much? As he spoke, Hu Qingxua could not help but reveal some anger in his tone. He felt that the actions of the person before him were no different from extortion. At the same time, both the Thousand-Year sect leader and the Qianwu sect leader looked at Zhou Donghuang. Hu Qingxua, the sect master of Blood Fiend sect, voiced their thoughts. Too many? Zhou Donghuang's eyes narrowed and he turned around lazily. He looked at Hu Qingxua and said, 200,000 spirit stones. As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, the entire place fell silent again. Everyone looked at Zhou Donghuang as if they had seen a ghost, feeling that this young man was too ruthless. Sir, you must be joking, right? Hu Qingxua was so angry that his face was red. He suppressed his anger and asked in a low voice. The entire spirit stone storage of the Shueisha sect only added up to a little more than 200,000 spirit stones. The young man before him was asking for an exorbitant amount of spirit stones that the Shueisha sect had accumulated for thousands of years? At the same time, the other people of the Shueisha sect also looked at Zhou Donghuang angrily. They had never imagined that this young man would be so overboard. 200,000 spirit stones? Why didn't he just rob them? This time, Zhou Donghuang's response to Hu Qingxua was a casual palm strike. Bang! The solid palm print was not as fancy as when he had killed Qindandan. When it landed on Hu Qingxua's body, it was like a heavy pile driver falling on his head. He was directly smashed into the hard ground and turned into a pile of meat paste. He was as dead as he could be. The dignified sect leader of the Shueisha sect, a late primal core adept, had died just like that. The expressions of the remaining people of the Shueisha sect changed drastically, and they became even more furious. However, they all lowered their heads, not daring to look up. What a joke. What if Zhou Donghuang killed them in a fit of rage? Although the crowd of onlookers from all over Ziyun were not from the three main sects, they could not help but feel their scalps go numb. They only felt that the young man in white before them was too overbearing. Of course, they all knew in their hearts, this young man had the ability to be overbearing. When we return to the Shueisha sect, tell the person who can make the decision. 200,000 spirit stones, not a single one less. Zhou Donghuang swept his gaze over the people of the Xuexia sect and the Tianwu sect as he spoke. When Zhou Donghuang's gaze once again swept over the leaders of the Qianqiu sect and the Tianwu sect, the two of them hurriedly bowed and lowered their heads. My lord, we will personally deliver 100,000 spirit stones to the Divine Light sect when we return. Zhou Donghuang nodded. Seeing that both of your sects have been cooperative, I will give each of your sects 2 spirit weapons. As he finished speaking, Zhou Donghuang casually tossed 2 swords and 2 knives to the leaders of the Qianqiu sect and the Tianwu sect as if he were throwing away trash. The 2 sect leaders each kept a knife and a sword. After testing the knives and swords in their hands, their eyes lit up. They looked at each other and saw the wild joy in each other's eyes. It's really a spirit weapon. The 2 of them said in unison. The resentment in their hearts was swept away in an instant, replaced by excitement. 100,000 spirit stones in exchange for 2 spirit weapons. They had made a profit. At this moment, not only did the people of the Qianqiu sect and the Tianwu sect think that they had made a profit, but the crowd of onlookers also felt that they had made a profit, and a big one at that. One had to know. Before this, there were only 2 spirit weapons in the entire Ziyun planet. The people of the Xuexia sect were so angry that they almost vomited blood. Not only did their Xuexia sect not get a single spirit weapon, but they also had to pay 200,000 spirit stones? Now they more or less had some resentment towards the dead Xuexia sect leader, Hu Qingxua. After all, it was precisely because Hu Qingxua had stood out that the Xuexia sect had suffered such a huge loss. Otherwise, not only would the Xuexia sect not have suffered a loss, they would have even made a profit. Leader Tuajin, lead the way. Zhou Donghuang returned to the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold's back. After returning to Yun Lu's side, he looked at the Divine Light sect leader Tuajin and asked him to lead the way to the Shenin sect. Yes. Tuajin replied. Before he moved, he looked at the leaders of the Qianqiu sect and the Tianwu sect. The 2 of you, the Divine Light sect, will follow Lord Donghuang to the Shenin sect. Will you come with us? Without waiting for a response, Tuajin led the group of primal core adepts from the Divine Light sect into the air and headed towards the Shenin sect. The golden-crowned eagle Little Gold also moved under the watchful eyes of the crowd, following closely behind the group of people from the Divine Light sect. After the leaders of the Qianqiu sect and the Tianwu sect regained their senses, they hurriedly brought their people to follow. Now, they had all guessed why Zhou Donghuang and the people from the Divine Light sect were going to the Shenin sect. After today, the Shenin sect will cease to exist. Because of the spirit weapons that Zhou Donghuang had given them, the people from the 2 sects were in a very good mood. They were also happy to help Zhou Donghuang and curry his favor. Therefore, when they reached the Shenin sect, Zhou Donghuang did not need to do anything himself. Zhou Donghuang directly found the secret storeroom of the Shenin sect and swept away all the spirit stones and valuable items that the Shenin sect had accumulated over the years. In fact, he didn't even have enough space rings. Fortunately, he had just killed a group of senior members of the Shenin sect and the Xuexia sect leader in Shenyang City and obtained their space rings, which were barely enough. Leader Tuajin, your Divine Light sect, already knew how terrifying Lord Donghuang was? Yi Wen, the leader of the Tianwu sect, asked after he and the leader of the Divine Light sect, Tuajin, had killed many elders of the Shenin sect. He felt that at the Feast of Ziyun, the people from the Divine Light sect had not spoken a word of disrespect to Zhou Donghuang. Furthermore, from the conversation between Zhou Donghuang and Tuajin, it was obvious that they had known each other for a long time and had even come to some kind of agreement. I already knew that Lord Donghuang had the ability to kill Golden Essence adepts, but I never imagined that he could even kill Dharma adepts. Tuajin sighed. If he had known that Zhou Donghuang had the ability to kill Zhongya, who had entered the Dharma stage, the Golden Essence Elder of the Divine Light sect, Xi Xian, would not have needed to leave because he was afraid of Zhongya. Leader Tuajin, after the Shenin sect was destroyed, the Shenin sect's base was left empty. It is a good place, there is a spirit stone mine below. Yi Wen's eyes flashed. Lord Donghuang, did you say what to do with the spirit stone mine? The spirit stone mine of the Shenin sect was even larger than the one of the Tianwu sect, and it produced more spirit stones every year. The Divine Light sect will move here, Tuajin said. Tuajin said, this will be the new base of the Divine Light sect. The Divine Light sect is moving here? And it is moving the entire sect? Yi Wen's eyes widened. What about your original base? The spirit stone mine on the Xinguang Peak where the Divine Light sect used to be was much larger than the one here. The original base. Tuajin smiled. That place will be left for Lord Donghuang. This was also the agreement that Zhou Donghuang had made with the Divine Light Sect when he had gone to the Divine Light Sect. The Divine Light Sect would move away from the Xinguang Peak and change their base to the Xianin sects. For this, Zhou Donghuang had promised to forge a spirit weapon for every Divine Light Sect adept of the late Primal Core stage and above. Because of this, both Tuajin, the leader of the Divine Light Sect, and the rest of the senior members of the Divine Light Sect were very satisfied with this deal. The destruction of the Xianin sect had been decided when Zhongye had taken Qin Dandan away 3 years ago. The karma that had been formed 3 years ago was finally resolved on this day. Looks like Lord Donghuang has given the Divine Light Sect a lot of benefits. Seeing that Tuajin was not only not unhappy about the change of the Divine Light Sect's base, but even seemed happy, it was not difficult for Yiwen to guess. End of this chapter. Chapter 207. Big brother, are you going to leave soon? In the sky above the Xianin sect, Yunlu looked at Zhou Donghuang from the back of the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold. Her face was unusually serious. Zhou Donghuang smiled dotingly and stroked Yunlu's hair. After I bring mother to the Xinguang Peak and prepare everything, I will leave. Zhou Donghuang had already mentioned to Yunlu that he was going to leave Ziyun, and now that Yunlu had asked him about it, he did not hide it. Big brother, will you come back? Yunlu asked again. Of course. Zhou Donghuang nodded confidently. I will miss you, when I come back I will definitely bring you something good. I don't want anything good. I just hope that you will come back often. Yunlu said seriously. Good. Zhou Donghuang smiled as he glanced at the Xianin sect. There were swords everywhere and the battle was completely one-sided. There was no doubt about the outcome. The strongest people in the Xianin sect had already been killed by him at the Feast of Ziyun. Even the strongest of those who had stayed behind to guard the Xianin sect's camp were no match for the Divine Light Sect leader, Tuajin. Not to mention the fact that there were also the leaders of the Thousand-Year Sect and the Tianwu sect who had attacked the Xianin sect. In just an hour, everything had been settled. Lord Donghuang, when I return, I will immediately bring 100,000 spirit stones to the Divine Light Sect and let Tuajin pass it to you. The leader of the Tianwu sect, Yi Wen, led a group of people from the Tianwu sect and bowed to Zhou Donghuang. He said hurriedly, also Lord Donghuang, if you have time in the future, you can come to the Tianwu sect as a guest. The Tianwu sect will treat you with the highest level of hospitality. Lord Donghuang, I will also send the spirit stones as soon as possible. Also, the Thousand-Year Sect welcomes you anytime. The leader of the Thousand-Year Sect said respectfully. The leaders of the two sects knew very well that in the battle at the Feast of Ziyun, the young man in white before them had become a god. This young man had the ability to dominate the entire Ziyun planet, and he was undoubtedly the most powerful person in the Ziyun planet. Such an existence could only be a friend, not an enemy. Yes. Zhou Donghuang nodded slightly at the two of them, and then looked at the leader of the Divine Light Sect, Tuajin. Leader Tuajin, I will go back now to fetch him. After you go back, make some preparations. Yes, Lord Donghuang. As Tuajin replied respectfully, the golden-crowned eagle flapped its wings and disappeared into the clouds with the siblings. Only when the golden-crowned eagle Little Gold's figure disappeared into the clouds did the people of the three sects retract their respectful gazes. Sect leader Tuajin, you are more familiar with Lord Donghuang? Is he really from Ziyun? After Zhou Donghuang left, Celestial Sect leader Yi Wen could not help but ask Tuajin. In the 1,000-plus-year history of the Ziyun planet, this was the first time such a heaven-defying figure had appeared. He even wondered if the other party was from the Ziyun planet. The Thousand-Year Sect leader also looked at Tuajin. It was obvious that he was also curious about this. Sect leader Yi, I know what you're thinking. Tuajin sighed. But Lord Donghuang is indeed a citizen of Ziyun. Who would have thought that our Ziyun planet would have such a godly talent? The Thousand-Year Sect leader sighed. When the people who came to Shenyang City for the Feast of Ziyun go back and spread the news, it will not be long before the name Zhou Donghuang is known throughout the entire Ziyun planet. Yi Wen sighed. I can imagine that for a long time in the history of the Ziyun planet, his name will be remembered by everyone. In front of him, the few Dharma adepts in the history of the Ziyun planet will pale in comparison. They will not be able to compete with him. It was just as the Celestial Sect leader Yi Wen had said. In the short span of a few months, everywhere on the planet of Ziyun, except for those remote and desolate places like the 16 countries of the East Valley and the 14 countries of southern Jiang, people from other places had basically heard of the name Zhou Donghuang, which they had never heard of before. Zhou Donghuang. A late primal core adept that defied the laws of nature. Why was he said to be heaven-defying? He was only in his early 20s. He had instantly killed the Shenin sect's Golden Essence adept, Qi Ming, and he had even killed Shenin sect's Dharma adept, Zhongya. He had single-handedly destroyed one of the 5 major sects of the Ziyun planet, the Shenin sect. Even if all the Golden Essence adepts of the 4 major sects of the Ziyun planet were combined, they would still be no match for him. Most importantly, he is still young and has unlimited potential. Zhou Donghuang will become a legendary figure in the history of the Ziyun planet. Lord Donghuang is the common goal of all the adepts of the Ziyun planet. In the entire Ziyun planet, whether it was the adepts who had seen Zhou Donghuang fight in Shenyang City or the adepts who had only heard of Zhou Donghuang but had never seen him, they all regarded Zhou Donghuang as their life goal. There were also some adepts who had seen Zhou Donghuang in Shenyang City who carved statues of Zhou Donghuang based on their memories and placed them in their sects and families as a form of faith. Zhou Donghuang was naturally unaware of all this. After leaving the Shenin sect, he had brought his sister Yun Lu back to the Valley of the Medicine Masters and brought his mother and the rest to the Xinguang sect's base, Xinguang Peak. Su Mo, the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, immediately gave the order. The Valley of the Medicine Masters was dissolved. The Donghuang sect was established. His master, Zhou Donghuang, was the founder of the Donghuang sect and the first sect leader. He was the deputy sect leader and was responsible for managing the affairs of the Donghuang sect. After the Divine Light sect moved away from Xinguang Peak, Xinguang Peak became the base of the Donghuang sect and was renamed Donghuang Peak. The Xinguang Empire was renamed Donghuang Empire. As for the original base of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, it was not abandoned and became the base of the Donghuang sect. Lu Qinghu, the patriarch of the Lu family in Yunfeng Prefecture of the western Chu Ridge of Yunyang, was the Donghuang sect leader. Announced to the various countries of the 16 countries of the East Valley that the Valley of the Medicine Masters is disbanded and the Donghuang sect is established. Make a book of the deeds of our Donghuang sect leader and send it to the various royal families of the 16 countries of the East Valley so that they can distribute it to every corner of the 16 countries of the East Valley. Following the orders of Lu Qinghu, it was not long before everyone in the 16 countries of the East Valley knew of Zhou Donghuang's deeds. They also knew that from now on, the master of the 16 countries of the East Valley was no longer the Valley of the Medicine Masters, but the Valley of the Medicine Masters. The Valley of the Medicine Masters had already been incorporated into the Donghuang sect. The former head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters, Su Mo, now served the Donghuang sect leader, Zhou Donghuang, as his master. I never thought that the legendary primal core adepts would be so common on our planet of Ziyun. The 5 great empires, the 5 great sects of Ziyun, I've never heard of them before. It turns out that our 16 countries of the East Valley is just a rural area on the planet of Ziyun. The 5 great empires are really something to look forward to. I never thought that one of the 5 great sects of Ziyun, the Shenin sect, would be destroyed by someone from our 16 countries of the East Valley, and that person is now the most powerful person on the planet of Ziyun. He single-handedly established the Donghuang sect, and even the head of the Valley of the Medicine Masters respects him as his master. He seems to be from the country of Yunyang. It is said that in the future the Donghuang sect will come to the capital of the 16 countries of the East Valley to recruit disciples every year. The outstanding martial arts geniuses may even be sent to the main Donghuang sect. And the main Donghuang sect is very close to the Donghuang Empire. Year 1234 of the Ziyun era. For the people of the 16 countries of the East Valley, this year was destined to be unforgettable. This year they learned of many things that they had never heard before. This year they learned that an extraordinary person had emerged from the 16 countries of the East Valley, and now he was the Donghuang sect leader who controlled the nearby Donghuang Empire. Of course, the people who were most shocked by all this were the people of the country of Yunyang, one of the 16 countries of the East Valley. Zhou Donghuang, is it really that Zhou Donghuang? It seems so. The members of the preeminent Lu family in the capital of Yunfeng Prefecture under the western ridge of the Chu King have all been taken to the Donghuang sect. And the Lu family is on good terms with Zhou Donghuang. The head of the Lu family, Lu Qinghu, has always followed Zhou Donghuang's lead. A preeminent family has soared to the skies and is now above the royal families of the 16 countries of the East Valley. It is said that the Donghuang sect leader is Lu Qinghu. Moreover, it is said that Lu Qinghu is now a primal core adept. When a man achieves the Tao, his fowls and dogs follow him. In the Chu royal city of the western ridge of the Chu King, a group of senior members of the Chu royal household gathered together. As they spoke, they all smiled bitterly inside. Back then, if they had not become enemies with Zhou Donghuang and had instead been on good terms with him, perhaps they would also have soared to the skies now. Many members of the Tycoon Tang family, led by Tang Liuanyin, were taken away by the people of the Donghuang sect a few days ago. There are also some members of the Grand Ren family who have been led by First Mistress Ren Jiape to the Donghuang sect. It is said that First Mistress Ren Jiape will be sent directly to the main Donghuang sect. This is normal. Not only is Ren Jiape on good terms with Yang Zishi, who is by Zhou Donghuang's side, but she is also on good terms with Zhou Donghuang himself. It is said that many members of the Yang family were so angry that they vomited blood. Who would have thought that the young Khanate stage of the past is now standing at the top of the Ziyun planet, invincible? Qingshan Town. The Qin family household. Sister Xiaoyu, Uncle Zhen, Big Brother asked me to come and fetch you. A huge black eagle floated in the air above the front yard of the Qin family household, and on its back stood a little girl of about 8 or 9 years old. When she spoke, her voice seemed to contain some sort of magical power, and it instantly spread throughout the entire Qin family household. Very quickly, many people gathered in the front yard of the Qin family household. It's Miss Yunlu, young Master Donghuang's sister. She has personally come to fetch Xiaoyu and Elder Qinzhen. Xiaoyu and Elder Qinzhen are being taken to the main Donghuang sect? Now, even the people of Qingshan Town, which was a remote place, knew about Zhou Donghuang's deeds. There was even a statue of Zhou Donghuang standing at the side of the main entrance of Yunxian restaurant in Qingshan Town, and a stone tablet beside the statue was carved with the various deeds of Zhou Donghuang after he had left Qingshan Town. End of this chapter. Chapter 208. Sometimes, a single choice could determine the course of a person's life. In the country of Yunyang, those who were on good terms with Zhou Donghuang would definitely rise to the Khanate stage or even the primal core stage. But those who were on bad terms with Zhou Donghuang were all filled with regret. Just like now. Seeing the young lady and the middle-aged man follow the little girl onto the back of the giant eagle and disappear into the clouds, the senior members of the lesser Qin family of Qinglin Town were filled with regret. Our Qin family has missed the chance to rise to the top. That year, if we had not stopped the old chief from taking Xiaoyu as his adopted daughter, the Qin family and young Master Donghuang would not have fallen out. I regret it. I regret it. Xiaoyu and Qinzhen will definitely rise to the top, and we will only be able to look up to them in the future. It was not just the lesser Qin family of Qinglin Town who felt regret. There were many others who felt regret. For example, the preeminent Lin family of Yunfeng Prefecture. If the Lin family had not chased Lin Lan out of the family, Zhou Donghuang would have become a foreign disciple of the Lin family, and his relationship with the Lin family would have been much closer than with the Lu family. But because of a wrong decision by the Lin family, their relationship with Lin Lan was completely severed, and they had missed Zhou Donghuang. The Lu family has all gone to the Donghuang subsect, where the Donghuang subsect used to be in the Valley of the Medicine Masters. It is said that anyone from the Lu family with some talent has a chance to be sent to the main Donghuang subsect. For example, the son of the former chief of the Lu family, Lu Qinghu, Lu Yuan, has been sent to the main Donghuang subsect. I heard that Lu Qinghu is now a primal core adept. I remember that in the past he was not even as strong as the chief of the Lin family. If the chief had not chased Lin Lan out of the family, he would already be a primal core adept. The position of chief of the Donghuang subsect would definitely belong to the chief as well. One wrong step and everything else goes wrong. Oh my god. Our Lin family has missed out on a great opportunity. Within the Lin family estate, the group of Lin family elders and disciples beat their chests and stamped their feet. They even secretly cursed the patriarch for being blind and causing the Lin family to miss such a good opportunity to rise to the top in a single bound. As for the chief of the Lin family, Lin Zhuiyue, he had been so angry that he had been bedridden after learning of Zhou Donghuang's achievements. Now, everyone in the capital city of Yunfeng Prefecture was laughing at Lin Zhuiyue, the head of the Lin family, for being so blind as to reject such a great opportunity. Ah, Qindandan Hai. Good kill. Good kill. The first young master of the Hong family, Hong Yunfei, had been chased out of the Valley of the Medicine Masters by Qindandan. After returning to the Hong family in the capital of Yunfeng Prefecture, he had shut himself into practice and rarely left the house. When he found out that Zhou Donghuang had killed Qindandan in Shenyang City, he was overjoyed and felt that his revenge had been avenged. Zhuiwa Zhous of the Lin Wu of Zhou of S Zhous of family Hong Lin Wei's Lin of the Hongs of Yang Yang's Yuns with families. Hong Wei, the head of the Hong family, was filled with regret. Otherwise, even if I'm not doing as well as Lu Qinghu, I wouldn't be too far off. Now he was just a mere qi-gathering adept. And Lu Qinghu was already a primal core adept. He had to look up to even a Khanate adept, much less a primal core adept. Father. I am preparing to participate in the assessment that the Donghuang subsect is organizing in Yunyang country this year. I want to pass the assessment and become a disciple of the Donghuang subsect. Hong Yunfei said to Hong Wei with a serious face, the current Donghuang subsect is even stronger than its predecessor, the Valley of the Medicine Masters. I want to fight to enter the Donghuang subsect. Of course, there was one more thing he did not say. He wanted to meet the legendary chief of the Donghuang sect, Zhou Donghuang, and thank him in person for killing Qin Dandan and indirectly avenging him. Zhou Donghuang, he actually has such achievements? In the Li family household, Li Rui's face was pale. She had never imagined that in just a few years, Zhou Donghuang would already be standing at the top of the Ziyun planet. Now Zhou Donghuang was equivalent to the sky of the Ziyun planet. With just a word he could decide the life and death of anyone in the Ziyun planet. This was the power of a king. The Donghuang Peak was now the base of the Donghuang sect. Of course, the Donghuang sect had not yet recruited disciples. The Divine Light sect had relocated, leaving not a single elder or disciple behind. Of course, this was also because Zhou Donghuang did not ask the Divine Light sect to stay. Otherwise, with just a word from him, the Divine Light sect would definitely keep whoever he wanted. Sister Jiape, I know you like Brother Zhou too. In a quiet courtyard halfway up the Donghuang Peak, Yang Zishi was sitting with Rin Jiape, who had just arrived at the Donghuang sect not long ago. She held Rin Jiape's hand tightly as she confided in her heart. Sister Zishi, don't worry. I won't fight with you. Rin Jiape forced a smile. Sister Jiape, that's not what I meant. Yang Zishi shook her head. I just wanted to tell you that if you really like Brother Zhou, you don't have to worry about me. Because even I, in front of Brother Zhou, I am just a latecomer. Yang Zishi sighed. Big Brother Zhou already has someone in his heart. Who? Rin Jiape's eyes narrowed. She had always felt that if Brother Zhou wanted to find a good match, Sister Zishi would be his first choice. But now, Sister Zishi was telling her, Brother Zhou already has someone he likes? I don't know either. I only know that she is not from the planet of Ziyun. I've asked Xiaolu and she said, Brother Zhou's sweetheart was already a primal core adept at the age of 20. A 20-year-old primal core adept who is not from the planet of Ziyun must have an extraordinary background. Her future achievements will be limitless. I'm telling you all this mainly to tell you, if you really like Brother Zhou and don't mind him having more than one woman at the same time, you have to work hard and try to catch up to that sister. That's what I think too. That's the only way I can help Big Brother Zhou and even gain his approval. Yang Zishi had kept these words in her heart for a long time, and she only said them in front of Rin Jiape. Rin Jiape fell silent. After a while, Rin Jiape's eyes shone with determination. Of course, even if we do this, we may not be able to be with Brother Zhou in the future. When it comes to relationships, it's about mutual affection. But I feel that since I like Brother Zhou, even if we can't be together in the end, I should do more for him and share his burdens. Yang Zishi paused, her eyes dazed with infatuation. To be able to see his gratified smile, I think it's worth it. In another secluded courtyard not far away, Lin Lan stood there, looking at Yang Zishi and Rin Jiape from afar. She let out a long sigh. Such good girls. If only they could all be my daughters-in-law. Miss, young Master Donghuang has already grown up. When it comes to relationships, let nature take its course. Granny Lian stood behind Lin Lan and said with a smile. Sometimes I really don't know what that child Donghuang is thinking. Lin Lan shook her head. Forget it, anyway he's about to leave the Ziyun planet to do what he wants to do. If he establishes a relationship with these two girls before he leaves, it would be unfair to them. At least from the looks of it now, even if Donghuang leaves, they won't have to suffer too much. As she spoke, Lin Lan raised her head and looked at the higher part of the Donghuang Peak. Donghuang should be done setting up those spells. When that time comes he will also leave. In the depths of Lin Lan's eyes, there was a hint of reluctance to part. Of course, although she was reluctant, she had no intention of forcing her son to stay, because she knew that her son had his own path to follow. A 23-year-old golden essence adept, the Ziyun planet can't contain him. Lin Lan sighed softly. At the top of the Donghuang Peak, Zhou Donghuang, dressed in a robe whiter than snow, stood in the air. Using his finger as a brush, he gathered his golden inner yuan and drew all sorts of complicated patterns and lines on the cliff face. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. After carving for a while, he raised his hand and spirit stones were inserted into some of the patterns as if they were free. He was setting up a protective spell for the Donghuang sect. This would be the first protective spell for the Ziyun planet. Whether it was the other 4 major sects of the Ziyun planet or the Shenin sect that Zhou Donghuang had destroyed, none of them had protective spells. In the boundless universe, protective spells were usually only available to sects that had adepts at the primordial soul stage and above. This was because protective spells required too many resources, and ordinary sects could not afford them at all. Even the protective spell that Zhou Donghuang was setting up now was made up of the weakest protective spell that he could remember. Otherwise, the resources that he had on hand would not have been enough to sustain the consumption of a protective spell. Defensive spells as well as other spells, I don't want them all. I only want offensive spells. For the offensive spell, just the spirit stones that I've inserted are enough to activate it 3 times. Once the offensive spell is activated, even an early Dharma adept would not be able to escape death. If it is unexpected, it would be enough to seriously injure a mid-Dharma adept. This was also a trump card that Zhou Donghuang had left behind before he left. He would hand it over to his mother Lin Lan and his sister Yun Lu. Done. Half a month later, Zhou Donghuang had successfully set up the spell. Of course, these few days he did not spend all his time setting up the spell, and the protective spell was not the only one he set up. There were also a few energy-gathering spells. During this time, Zhou Donghuang had been practicing, and in his spare time, setting up the spell did not affect his practice. In the next 2 days I'll spend time with Mother and Xiao Lu. After 2 days I'll leave the Ziyun planet. It was late at night, and Zhou Donghuang looked up at the stars in the sky, his eyes filled with anticipation and excitement. He was finally going to leave the Ziyun planet. He was even more excited now than when he had left Earth in his previous life. End of this chapter. Chapter 209. While he was setting up the Donghuang Peak, Zhou Donghuang not only did not neglect his practice, but he also forged ultimate and superior spirit weapons for those close to him. At the same time he also produced a large batch of core drugs. Of course he also left some core drugs for his mother Lin Lan. His mother as a woman was meticulous. Furthermore, she practiced the technique of everlasting youth, and after entering the primal core stage she could produce a core fire that was very suitable for refining core drugs. Furthermore, from the fact that his mother liked to use some of the prescriptions he gave her to make medicine, it was clear that she was very interested in medicine and core drugs. Putting all these together, it was not difficult to see that his mother had the potential to become an outstanding core forging master. Donghuang, with your ability, if you stay on the Ziyun planet I have nothing to worry about, but if you leave the Ziyun planet, it means that there are countless hidden dangers waiting for you, Lin Lan said to Zhou Donghuang with a serious expression. So, I only have one request for you. Be careful. Lin Lan said solemnly to Zhou Donghuang. Mother, don't worry. Zhou Donghuang smiled confidently. In his previous life, he had traveled the boundless universe alone for thousands of years before he had a strong level of practice that allowed him to stand at the top of the universe. With the experience of his previous life, the boundless universe was not unknown to him, and everything was a walk in the park for him. Brother, you have to come back soon, otherwise I will miss you very, very much. Yun Lu looked at Zhou Donghuang reluctantly. After so many years together, she had long regarded the young man before her as her own brother. All right, I will listen to you. Zhou Donghuang smiled dotingly. Because he had already made all the necessary preparations before he left, he spent the entire day with his mother and sister Yun Lu. He told Yun Lu stories and taught Lin Lan how to activate the Great Guardian Shield formation. At the same time, Zhou Donghuang also passed on some of the core drugs he had already written down to Lin Lan, so that she would not have to take the wrong path when she entered the primal core stage. Donghuang, tomorrow spend some time with Zishi and Jiape. They are staying together. When you want to leave, just let me know. Late at night, before Zhou Donghuang returned to his residence, Lin Lan said to him. Zhou Donghuang was stunned at first, then he nodded. Yeah. Yun Lu nodded in agreement. Big brother, Sister Zishi and Sister Jiape really like you? If you leave without spending some time with them, they will be very sad. You're just a little kid, but you're full of mischief. After glaring at Yun Lu, Zhou Donghuang left. After returning to his room, Zhou Donghuang sat cross-legged on his bed and examined his elixir field. Now, in Zhou Donghuang's elixir field, 4 primal cores floated there, 2 of which were silver in color, and silver inner yuan flowed around them. The other 2 yuan dan were golden in color, surrounded by golden quintessential essence. Now the 2 silver cores were suspended in the air, motionless. The silver true essence around them did not disperse, but it did not extend outwards. The 2 golden essences continued to revolve. Even though Zhou Donghuang was not deliberately practicing, they were still circulating their qi according to the Lord of the Four Supremes, absorbing spirit energy from the outside world as they practiced. Of course, the efficiency was not as high as when he cultivated on purpose. And this was the privilege of adepts of the ultimate primal core stage and above. Even if he did not deliberately practice, the golden essences in his elixir field would still cultivate on their own. However, because it was self-cultivation, the 2 golden essences only strengthened themselves and did not help the other 2 silver essences to cultivate. The cultivation of the 2 silver essences still depended on Zhou Donghuang himself. The most important thing now is to cultivate the 2 silver essences into golden essences. Zhou Donghuang thought to himself. Now, almost a year had passed since the Feast of Ziyun was held in Xinyan City. At that time, Zhou Donghuang's elixir field had 3 silver essences and 1 solid essence. In almost a year, with the help of the rare herbs that the Xinyan sect had accumulated over the years, Zhou Donghuang's level of practice had increased by leaps and bounds. Not only had the solid essence transformed into a silver essence, but 2 of the other 3 silver essences had also transformed into golden essences. With my current ability, even if the Xinyan sect elder Zhongya had refined his dharma to the point where it was flawless, I would still be able to crush him with the ultimate primal core spirit weapon. Zhou Donghuang's current ability was completely different from what it had been a year ago. Tomorrow I will have to face Zishi again, and Jiape. Thinking of Lin Lan's instructions, Zhou Donghuang felt a headache coming on. At the same time he could not help but think of the girl named Luo Qinghan, whom he had accidentally had sex with in the past. In the past I always thought that I liked her. But, as time passed until now, that strange feeling towards her seems to have faded quite a bit. Come to think of it, I don't understand her and she doesn't understand me either, so how could I like her? But, I still have to take responsibility. Regardless of whether she needs me to take responsibility or not, she is still my woman. This is a fact that has already been set in stone. Also, the women that I, Zhou Donghuang, have slept with, I will not allow any other man to touch them. As he thought of this, Zhou Donghuang's eyes suddenly shone with a cold light, which he only retracted after a while. Although I don't have any actual feelings for her now, but feelings can be slowly cultivated. The next day, Zhou Donghuang followed his mother's instructions and went to look for Yang Zishi and Ren Jiape. Perhaps because they knew that Zhou Donghuang was about to leave, Yang Zishi and Ren Jiape did not bring up any sensitive topics. Big brother Zhou, don't worry. After you leave Ziyun, I will help you take good care of Aunt Lan and Xiao Lu. Yang Zishi said with a smile. Thank you. Zhou Donghuang smiled in thanks. Big brother Zhou, we will wait for you to come back. Ren Jiape could not hide the strange emotions in her eyes. In the evening, Zhou Donghuang said goodbye to Yang Zishi and Ren Jiape, then went to see Fu, Freezing Wind, Zhou Han and Zhou Feng. After giving them some instructions and passing them the follow-up techniques, Zhou Donghuang gave them pointers for the entire night. It was not until the wee hours that Zhou Donghuang returned. I will leave tomorrow. Before returning, Zhou Donghuang told Fu and the rest. Practice well. I hope that the next time I return, you will all have entered the Dharma stage. As soon as Zhou Donghuang said this, Fu and the rest immediately realized that their young master would be away for a long time. Of course, Zhou Donghuang's expectations of them were not high. Within 10 years he would definitely be back. With the energy-gathering matrix that he had set up on the Donghuang Peak, Fu and the rest's practice speed would not be slow. As long as they did not slack off, they would definitely enter the Dharma stage within 10 years. The next day, as Zhou Donghuang prepared to leave, everyone who was on the Donghuang Peak came out to send him off. Lin Lan Yun Lu, Yang Zishi Ren Jiape, Fu Freezing Wind Zhou Han Zhou Feng, Qin Xiaoyu Qin Zhen. The golden-crowned eagles, Big Gold and Little Gold, were also there. Big brother Donghuang, Xiaoyu will wait for you to return. Qin Xiaoyu said to Zhou Donghuang with red eyes, her tone full of reluctance. Now, Qin Xiaoyu was no longer the little girl of the past. She had grown up, and the childishness in her beautiful cheeks was almost gone. Unlike Yun Lu, who had maintained the appearance of an 8 or 9-year-old girl. I will return within 10 years. High up in the sky, Zhou Donghuang stood with his hands behind his back and nodded to the crowd. Then, with a flash of his body, a golden flame seemed to ignite around him. In the next moment, he transformed into a bolt of golden lightning and shot into the sky, disappearing into the clouds. Wah! Yun Lu, who had been holding back her tears sensibly, could no longer hold it in as she watched her brother leave. She threw herself into Lin Lan's arms and cried loudly. Whether it was Lin Lan, Yang Zishi, or Ren Jiape, tears streamed down their faces as well. Obviously, in order to let Zhou Donghuang leave in peace, they had been holding it in. Xiaoyu, don't cry. Qin Jin comforted his daughter. Didn't your brother Donghuang say? He will return within 10 years. 10 years. Without attaining the primal core stage, a person's life would only last 10 years. This time, Zhou Donghuang did not bring anyone with him. He did not even bring the golden-crowned eagles, Big Gold and Little Gold, leaving them to guard the Donghuang sect. There are only a few people in the Donghuang sect now, and they do not live up to their name. However, the next time I return, I believe that they will have already developed the Donghuang sect. Before he left this time, Zhou Donghuang not only set up an energy-gathering formation for the residents of Lin Lan and the rest, but he also set up other formations in other parts of the Donghuang Peak. Of course, there were good and bad ones among these formations. However, even the best of these formations were much worse than the one that covered the residents of Lin Lan and the rest. These were all prepared by him for the future disciples of the Donghuang sect. In my memory, there are no teleportation portals on any of the planets in the galaxy where the Ziyun planet is located. Let's find the nearest teleportation portal first. Zhou Donghuang raised his hand, and an azure ball the size of a baby's fist appeared in his hand. It could also be called a pearl, and it was the energy-seeking pearl that Zhou Donghuang had made. The function of the energy-seeking pearl was to find the nearest teleportation portal. The spell that was set up inside it would resonate with the nearby teleportation portals. The production of the energy-seeking pearl was very simple. As long as one knew how to set up the spell, even an early primal core craftsman could make it. As for the materials, they could use anything as long as it could withstand the spell needed to make the energy-seeking pearl. Of course, on the Ziyun planet, there was a high chance that no one knew how to make the energy-seeking pearl. This was because, on the Ziyun planet, there was not a single true craftsman. In Zhou Donghuang's eyes, a true craftsman had to at least be able to make inferior primal core spirit weapons, and not be able to make things like sword spheres and space rings. After Zhou Donghuang injected his inner yuan into the energy-seeking pearl, it immediately flew into the air and sped off in a certain direction. Zhou Donghuang followed closely. After we reached the teleportation array, where should we go next? Zhou Donghuang racked his brains as he followed the energy-seeking pearl, searching through the memories of his previous life. It is now year 1234 of the Ziyun era. At this time in my previous life I was still on Earth. End of this chapter. Chapter 210. In my previous life, although I met them on Earth, other than helping them and interfering with their lives, my previous encounters did not affect their lives at all. Zhou Donghuang kept the form-seeking pearl and sped off in the direction indicated by the pearl. He planned to leave the Ziyun planet and head to another galaxy. In this life, although I did not appear on Earth earlier and did not meet them again, their lives will definitely follow their original path if nothing unexpected happens. Among them, the earliest incident will happen about 10 years later. As such, I am not in a hurry to go to Earth for now. When I return to the Ziyun planet, I will go to Earth and help them solve their problems. Very quickly, Zhou Donghuang made up his mind. However, before I reach a planet with a teleporter, I still need to consider where to go. There is no need to go to an unknown place. It is risky and full of uncertainties. In this life, my greatest advantage is the 1,000 years of memories from my previous life. Zhou Donghuang was not an inflexible person. With 1,000 years of memories from his previous life, he naturally would not take the wrong path in the name of training in this life. Whichever path was easier to walk on, he would take it. If there was a shortcut to take and it was a safer shortcut, he would be a fool not to take it. Think about it, after I left Earth in my previous life, I heard about some places where relics of the strong appeared or where treasures were born. As Zhou Donghuang hurried along, he searched through the memories of his previous life. There were too many memories from his previous life, especially from the time after he left Earth. If he did not actively recall them, he would not be able to recall them. The memories from the last few hundred years of his previous life were more clear. Furthermore, in those memories, there were many details about the ancient relics and the relics of the strong that he could reach before anyone else. However, those pieces of information were of no use to him now. This was because, with his current ability, Even if he knew where the relics were and what treasures were born, he would not be able to obtain the items in the relics. He would not be able to obtain the treasures. Without diamonds, one would not be able to do it. Zhou Donghuang had always stuck to this principle. Got it? Let's go to the Honglong planet of the Tianma galaxy first. A memory flashed through Zhou Donghuang's mind, causing his eyes to light up. Heavenly Horse Galaxy, Great Dragon Planet. That was also one of the planets he had visited in his previous life after he had left Earth. At that time, someone had obtained a relic left behind by a Dharma Peak adept on the Honglong planet. It was said that the Dharma Peak adept was a lone practitioner. When he was about to die of old age, he set up a spell to hide his tracks, waiting for the fated person to collect his belongings. Eventually, that place was discovered by a few disciples of a large sect on the Great Dragon Planet, and the relics of the Dharma Peak adept were also obtained by that sect. That incident had spread like wildfire on the Great Dragon Planet. Basically, everyone on the Great Dragon Planet knew about it, as long as they weren't particularly uninformed. I think it's in the Demonic Beast Mountain range north of the Great Dragon Star Sky Sword sect. I can't remember the name of the Demonic Beast Mountain range. However, that place is the place where the younger generation disciples of the Heavenly Sword sect and some of the surrounding forces train. And when we reach the Grand Dragon Star, we just need to find the Sky Sword sect's encampment. As he thought about this, Zhou Donghuang felt much more assured. In my previous life, I only found out about this about 130 years later. However, at that time, the Sky Sword sect spread the news that the Dharma Peak adept had already died of old age 200 years ago. That means that Dharma Peak adept had already died of old age 70 years ago. Now, his relics are already there. Although I don't know exactly where it is in the Demonic Beast Mountain range. Since it's there, I'm sure I'll be able to find it if I look carefully. Zhou Donghuang was very confident about this. I hope that the teleporter that the energy-seeking pearl will lead me to is in the galaxy next to where the Ziyun planet is, otherwise I'll have to travel to other galaxies and that'll take a long time. Zhou Donghuang prayed silently. In his previous life, Zhou Donghuang had been brought to Earth by the crazy Taoist, and they had traveled through space. And the galaxy where Earth was located was next to where the Ziyun planet was. Of course, it was not in the direction that Zhou Donghuang was heading to now. Now, Zhou Donghuang was heading to another galaxy. There were no teleporters in the galaxy where the Ziyun planet was located. This meant that anyone who wanted to come to the Ziyun planet would either have to rely on random teleporters, or they could only teleport to a nearby galaxy and cross the galaxy physically. Apart from these two methods, there was no other way. On the other hand, the galaxy where Earth was located had a teleporter, and it was on Earth, and it was not just one, there were 9 of them. Whoosh! Guided by the energy-seeking pearl, Zhou Donghuang traveled at full speed. The golden flames around his body surged, and his entire person seemed to have transformed into a golden meteor flying through space. A month later, Zhou Donghuang finally crossed to another galaxy physically. And this was because the Ziyun planet was relatively close to this galaxy. If he had gone to Earth, it would have taken at least 3 months for Zhou Donghuang to enter the galaxy where Earth was located. When he left the Ziyun planet, the spirit energy in the air had already become thinner, and the further he went from the Ziyun planet, the thinner the spirit weapons became. Along the way, Zhou Donghuang relied on spirit stones to replenish the inner yuan in his body to support the journey. In the blink of an eye, another 2 months had passed. I haven't even seen the planet, but the spirit energy has already become so thick. Looks like the teleporter that the energy-seeking pearl is taking me to is on the planet ahead. After traveling for 2 months in another galaxy, Zhou Donghuang felt that the spirit energy in the sky had suddenly become thicker, and the further he went, the thicker the spirit energy became. In these 2 months, Zhou Donghuang had passed by 3 planets in this galaxy, but these 3 planets did not have spirit energy, and there were obviously no spirit stone veins on them. They were all uninhabited planets, and the various environments were not suitable for the survival of ordinary life. I see it. 10 days later, a planet appeared before Zhou Donghuang's eyes. Not only was it bigger than Earth, it was even much bigger than the Ziyun planet. However, it was not as good-looking as the Ziyun planet, let alone compared to Earth. Earth was the most beautiful planet that Zhou Donghuang had ever seen in his 2 lives. It was the most beautiful planet he had ever seen. What a thick spirit energy. 3 days later, Zhou Donghuang followed the guidance of the energy-seeking pearl and arrived at the sky where the teleporter of the planet was located. He passed through the clouds and slowly descended. The spirit energy on this planet was much thicker than that of the Ziyun planet. The environment of the Ziyun planet makes it difficult for even Dharma adepts to be born, but on this planet, not just Dharma adepts, even primordial soul adepts can be born. After deeply feeling the spirit energy on this planet, it was not difficult for Zhou Donghuang to confirm this point. Of course, only planets that had given birth to primordial soul adepts, or planets that had once been visited by primordial soul adepts, could possibly have a teleporter. The inscription of a teleporter was not complicated, nor was it difficult, but there was a requirement for one's level of practice. One had to be a primordial soul adept or above to be able to inscribe it. I've arrived. Very quickly, Zhou Donghuang, who had followed the guidance of the energy-seeking pearl, discovered the location of the teleporter. It was located in a desert. In the boundless desert, there was a stone platform that occupied a vast area. On the stone platform there were 9 areas, and each area was inscribed with extremely deep patterns, and they were all exactly the same. In addition, at the 4 corners of the stone platform, there were 4 huge stone pillars. These 4 stone pillars would require at least 10 adults holding hands to encircle them. They were at least 100 feet tall and looked majestic, and they were also inscribed with deep patterns. This was a standard interstellar teleportation array. Under the main teleporter, there were 9 subsidiary teleporters, which could simultaneously transport 9 batches of people across planets and galaxies. In addition, on each of the 4 stone pillars of the galaxy teleporter, there were 3 lines of words: Akiyama Galaxy, Planet Hiyu, the Wilderness North. Obviously, this planet was called Planet Hiyu, and this was a part of the planet known as the Wilderness North, and the galaxy where Planet Hiyu was located was called the Akiyama Galaxy. The 3 lines of words inscribed on the pillars could be said to be the coordinates of this teleporter in the boundless universe. From other galaxies and planets, one could use the teleporter to teleport to this place. Someone's here? Just as he arrived above the stone platform, Zhou Donghuang seemed to have discovered something. His eyebrows raised and his gaze focused on one of the stone pillars. I've been discovered. The target is a golden essence adept. Get out. 3 voices rang out simultaneously from behind the stone pillars, and 3 figures shrouded in golden flames appeared from behind the stone pillars. In a blink of an eye, they surrounded Zhou Donghuang. If you don't want to die, scram. Faced with the 3 golden essence adepts surrounding him, Zhou Donghuang's expression was calm, but his eyes flashed coldly as he shouted impatiently. These 3 golden essence adepts were obviously lying in ambush beside the galaxy teleporter, waiting for an opportunity to use the teleporter to other places, or to rob adepts who had used the teleporter to come here. Only primal core adepts and above could use the galaxy teleporter. Because of this, regardless of whether it was the person being teleported or the person being teleported, they would not be weak. Waiting here, if they met someone weaker than them and if they met someone stronger than them, they would hide. Zhou Donghuang had met many people like this in his previous life. Of course, he had only met such people on planets where primordial soul adepts were rare. This was because on planets where primordial soul adepts and even stronger adepts were as common as the clouds, it was basically impossible to meet such people, because no one dared to take the risk. For adepts of the Dharma stage and above, unless they fought, it was very difficult to determine their actual level of practice. Unless a primordial soul adept used his divine will to investigate. However, primordial soul adepts did not even deign to wait around the galaxy teleporter to rob passers-by. End of chapter. Chapter 211. Upon hearing Zhou Donghuang's words, the 3 golden essence adepts who had surrounded him were stunned. After a while, they regained their composure and looked at each other. They could not help but burst out laughing. Ah! I'm dying of laughter. A mere golden core cultivator actually dares to challenge us? Does he think he's a Dharma adept? What a joke. The 3 golden essence adepts looked at Zhou Donghuang mockingly. Each of them had a weapon in their hands, 2 knives and 1 sword. Their golden inner yuan was infused into the weapons, and they shone brightly. 3 superior grade spirit weapons? Zhou Donghuang raised an eyebrow. He had not expected that these 3 golden essence adepts who had come out to rob him would all have superior grade spirit weapons. Superior grade spirit weapons could increase the power of inner yuan by 60%. On the planet of Ziyun, due to the limited resources available, Zhou Donghuang could not give each of his men an ultimate spirit weapon. Most of them only had superior grade spirit weapons. That's true, this planet might even have primordial soul adepts. This planet is not something that the planet of Ziyun can compare to. Any random golden essence adept would have a superior grade spirit weapon. After thinking this through, Zhou Donghuang felt at ease. Since none of you wish to leave, then stay, Zhou Donghuang said calmly. In his right hand, the spirit weapon, the folding fan, was in his hand. As his golden inner yuan was infused into it, the golden flames surged. An ultimate spirit weapon? Unlike the narrow-minded golden essence adepts of the planet of Ziyun, the three golden essence adepts surrounding Zhou Donghuang immediately recognized that the spirit weapon in Zhou Donghuang's hand was an ultimate spirit weapon. On planet Heyu, there were craftsmen who could forge Dharma spirit weapons, not to mention primordial core spirit weapons. However, even a craftsman who could forge a Dharma spirit weapon might not be able to forge an ultimate spirit weapon. This was because ultimate spirit weapons were extremely difficult to forge. The inscriptions on an ultimate spirit weapon were extremely complicated, at least 10 times more complicated than the inscriptions on a superior grade spirit weapon. On planet Heyu, the number of weapon forgers who could produce ultimate spirit weapons were few and far between. Furthermore, the chances of them producing ultimate spirit weapons were extremely low. Because of this, the ultimate primal core spirit weapons of planet Heyu were usually in the hands of the disciples of the great clans. It's an ultimate spirit weapon. I'm rich. I'm rich. I really didn't expect it to be a fat sheep. Kill him. The ultimate primal core spirit weapon is ours. The eyes of the three golden essence adepts shone with greed, and they attacked almost at the same time. 2 knives and 1 sword, with a sharp golden glow, flew towards Zhou Donghuang like 3 beams of light. Is it not good to be alive? Faced with the combined attack of 3 golden essence adepts, Zhou Donghuang shook his head and sighed. Then the golden light on his body intensified, instantly doubling in strength. At the same time, the true core energy on the folding fan in his hand instantly doubled. The inner yuan of the 2 golden elixirs in Zhou Donghuang's elixir field fused perfectly and roared out at the same time. After being amplified by the ultimate spirit weapon, the surrounding air seemed to stagnate. Whoosh! Zhou Donghuang moved towards one of the knife-wielding golden essence adepts. His speed was more than double that of his opponent, and in the blink of an eye he brushed past him. Whoosh! A brilliant golden light flashed past, and the golden essence adept's head flew into the sky. Whoosh! Just as the other 2 golden essence adepts regained their senses and their expressions changed, another golden essence adept's head flew into the air. Only the last golden essence adept was left trembling. What kind of monster is this? His inner yuan is more than double that of ours. How can there be such a huge difference? What kind of person is he? Is he really human? Whoosh! The last golden essence adept followed in the footsteps of his 2 companions, and with a flash of blood, his head flew into the sky. Thump, thump, thump. 3 heads fell to the ground in less than a breath's time. Before this, Zhou Donghuang had already collected their spirit weapons and space rings. The quality of these 3 spirit weapons is not bad. It's a pity that the craftsman's skills are too poor. If I reforge them, I can make them into ultimate primal core spirit weapons, said Zhou Donghuang. And these 3 space rings are made of space stones that are better than the ones in my space ring. If I reforge them, the space inside will be larger. Indeed, this planet has mid-quality spirit stones. In the spatial rings left behind by the 3 golden core cultivators, there was a considerable amount of spirit stones, and there was no lack of mid-grade spirit stones. Normally, unless a mere golden core cultivator came from an extraordinary background, it was impossible for them to have so much wealth. In the boundless universe, the value of 1 mid-quality spirit stone was equivalent to the total value of 10 inferior quality spirit stones. The 3 golden essence adepts were all robbers, and although they did not have much background, they had always been lucky, and so they were quite wealthy. It was a pity that they had met Zhou Donghuang. The current Zhou Donghuang, with his primal core stage inner yuan, the 1,000 years of battle experience from his past life, and the ultimate primal core spirit weapon. Even in the entire universe, there was almost no one below the Dharma stage who could match him. Of course, almost. The universe was too big and there were many races in the universe. Among them, there were many races that were born with powerful bodies and incredible combat abilities. Zhou Donghuang himself was just one of the more mediocre humans in the universe. Of course, in the entire universe, humans made up more than 80% of the population. Next were beasts who made up about 10%. The remaining 10% were other life forms. Time to go. After Zhou Donghuang collected his spoils of war, he leaped onto the stone platform and landed on one of the submatrices of the galaxy teleporter. At the same time, Zhou Donghuang threw 10 mid-quality spirit stones into a rectangle in front of him. The rectangle was very large and it could hold hundreds of spirit stones. As the 10 mid-quality spirit stones entered the rectangle, an invisible force enveloped Zhou Donghuang. At this time, Zhou Donghuang began to recite the name of his destination. Tianma Galaxy. Honglong Planet. Sky Sword Sect. Using the galaxy teleporter would require different amounts of spirit stones for adepts of different levels. 4 primal core adepts, if they wanted to use the same galaxy teleporter, they would only need 1 mid-quality spirit stone, or 10 inferior quality spirit stones. If they wanted to use the galaxy teleporter, they would need 10 mid-quality spirit stones, or 100 inferior quality spirit stones. 4 Dharma adepts to use the galaxy teleporter, they would need to pay 10 times the price of a primal core adept. To use the galaxy teleporter, 10 mid-quality spirit stones, or 1 superior quality spirit stone. At this time, one could use 100 inferior quality spirit stones to use the galaxy teleporter. If they wanted to use the galaxy teleporter, they would need 100 mid-quality spirit stones, or 10 superior quality spirit stones, or 1 ultimate spirit stone. At this time, no amount of inferior quality spirit stones would be of any use. This was because the galaxy teleporter could only hold 100 spirit stones, and that was the upper limit. And for primordial soul adepts to use the galaxy teleporter, they would need to pay 10 times the price of a Dharma adept. In the future it would be the same. For example, in Zhou Donghuang's previous life, when he was a heavenly adept, even if he wanted to use the galaxy teleporter to travel between planets, it would still require 100 ultimate spirit stones. Whoosh! Whoosh! Almost as soon as Zhou Donghuang finished reciting his destination, the inscriptions beneath his feet suddenly lit up, and the inscriptions on the 4 stone pillars around him also lit up. In the next moment, Zhou Donghuang's entire body was enveloped by the light, and his body was completely submerged. After a while, when the light dissipated, Zhou Donghuang was nowhere to be seen, as if he had disappeared into thin air. At the same time, the stone platform and stone pillars of the galaxy teleporter also returned to normal, as if nothing had happened. To Zhou Donghuang, when he was enveloped by the power of the galaxy teleporter, his vision went black and then bright, and he saw another galaxy teleporter. In fact, this galaxy teleporter was almost exactly the same as the one he had seen before. However, because the location was different, Zhou Donghuang was certain that it was another galaxy teleporter, and the inscriptions on the 4 stone pillars around the galaxy teleporter were also different. Tianma Galaxy. Honglong Planet. Sky Sword Sect. Obviously, he had reached his destination. This was the Honglong planet of the Tianma Galaxy. Of course, although the coordinates of this galaxy teleporter were for the Sky Sword Sect, it was definitely near the base of the Sky Sword Sect and not inside the base. Otherwise, wouldn't anyone be able to directly teleport into the base of the Sky Sword Sect? This galaxy teleporter was most likely set up by the primordial soul adepts of the Sky Sword Sect, to make it convenient for the people of the Sky Sword Sect to travel between the various galaxies and planets. That is the Sky Sword Sect. This galaxy teleporter was located in the middle of a mountain forest. Zhou Donghuang looked at a few perilous peaks not far away, and according to his memory, he remembered that this was the base of the Sky Sword Sect. Now, let's go to the north of the base of the Sky Sword Sect, to the Demon Forest, and look for the relics left behind by the Dharma Peak Adept. Zhou Donghuang rose into the air and headed north of the Sky Sword Sect. On the way, Zhou Donghuang's attention was involuntarily focused on the galaxy teleporter. Although the galaxy teleporter is not difficult to carve as long as one is a primordial soul adept and above and has seen the formation patterns and diagrams, one can set it up, but if one really delves into it, it involves space teleportation. Space teleportation. Not to mention me who was a Deva adept in my previous life, even the deity tribulation adepts who are above the Deva adepts, would not be able to do it. Behind the galaxy teleporter, I feel like there is a shadow of the legendary divine realm. It is as if there was a powerful person from the divine realm who set up the rules in the boundless universe, so that anyone who is above the primal core stage can use the galaxy teleporter created by those who are above the primordial soul stage. As for where the inscriptions and diagrams of the galaxy teleporter came from, there is no way to trace it back. If we really want to trace it back, we can definitely trace it back to ancient times or even earlier. End of this chapter. Chapter 212. Forget it, I won't think about it anymore. The secrets behind the galaxy teleporter are things that even I, who had attained the heavenly stage in my previous life, Could not understand, much less now. There's no point in thinking about it now. Zhou Donghuang immediately stopped thinking about it. In my previous life I had passed by this Honglong planet and was about to have a breakthrough in my training, so I stayed here for a while. After hearing that it was a relic left behind by a Dharma Peak adept, I purposely came here. At that time I was just an ordinary primal core adept, and I wanted to come here to see if there was a chance for me to take advantage of this opportunity. At that time I was not the only one who wanted to take advantage of this opportunity. However, at that time, the Sky Sword sect had sealed off the entire mountain range of beasts, so I and the others had made a wasted trip. With the memories of his previous life, Zhou Donghuang had a certain level of understanding of the Honglong planet. There was a primordial soul adept on the Honglong planet, but he only had a few decades left to live. In his previous life, when Zhou Donghuang had arrived at the Honglong planet, he had heard that the primordial soul adept had already passed away a few decades ago. The Sky Sword sect was considered a rather powerful sect on the Great Dragon planet. It was located in a remote area, and there was a Dharma Peak adept in the sect. However, there was only one Dharma Peak adept in the sect. Because of this, the Sky Sword sect valued the relic left behind by a Dharma Peak adept very much, and they did not even leave a chance for others to take advantage of this opportunity. I'm here. As he thought about it, Zhou Donghuang looked down and saw a vast mountain range in front of him. It was covered in greenery and the mountain path was winding and winding. Zhou Donghuang did not discover anything after flying in a circle in the air. Without my divine will, there's no way to investigate the situation in the air. Zhou Donghuang shook his head and sighed as he descended. Divine will can only be formed after attaining the primordial soul stage. The current me is still a long way from being able to form my divine will. Zhou Donghuang, who had trained in the Lord of the Four Supremes, was still a long way from the Dharma stage, let alone the primordial soul stage, which was above the Dharma stage. If I can't find anything from the air, then I'll go in and investigate. Although it's a waste of time, it's better than being a headless fly. Zhou Donghuang passed through the shade of a forest and entered the side of the mountain range. He planned to search the entire mountain range in search of the relics left behind by the Dharma Peak adept. As soon as he landed, Zhou Donghuang felt the ground tremble slightly. Just as he turned around, he saw a giant wolf with a black mane that stood up like a hedgehog. It was running toward him from afar, and its bloodthirsty eyes were staring at him. Its mountain-like body was pressing toward him. The speed of the giant wolf was very fast, and the true chi under its feet was more than 10 feet. Khanate demon? With one look, Zhou Donghuang could tell that the wolf was a late-stage Khanate demon. In Zhou Donghuang's eyes, this type of demon was no different from an ant. Roar, the giant wolf did not realize the danger. Although it was intelligent, in its eyes, a human youth who looked to be in his 20s could not pose any threat to it. In the blink of an eye, the giant wolf was right in front of Zhou Donghuang. It pounced on him, its jaws wide open, saliva dripping from its fangs. It looked extremely ferocious. Whoosh! Zhou Donghuang did not move, but a silver inner yuan shot out from his body and formed a silver palm in the air, slamming down on the giant wolf's head. Bang! With a loud crash, the giant wolf's body stopped in its tracks, and it fell to the ground, no longer breathing. Its huge head had been flattened, and brain juices flowed all over the ground. After killing the giant wolf, Zhou Donghuang did not even look at it. Instead, he began to search the surroundings to see if the final resting place of the Dharma Peak adept was nearby. It's the Black Wolf King. Suddenly, a woman's scream came from behind, causing Zhou Donghuang to turn around to look. With just a glance, he saw a woman in green who could barely be considered a beauty. She was dressed in neutral clothes, had delicate features, and carried a sheathed longsword on her back. In the blink of an eye, she came to the side of the giant wolf that he had killed. Behind the woman in green, there were two other young men. Regardless of whether it was the woman in green or the two young men, they looked to be about the same age as Zhou Donghuang. It really is the Black Wolf King. The gray-clothed, ordinary-looking young man with a sheathed long sword at his waist came to the woman's side. He looked at the dead giant wolf and exclaimed, "Oh my God! What a strong force!" He directly smashed the Black Wolf King's head. The person who killed the Black Wolf King must have been an expert with his palms. "You killed the Black Wolf King?" The last young man, who was dressed in green and had rather good looks and a soft sword at his waist, did not follow them to look at the dead giant wolf. Instead, he looked at Zhou Donghuang cautiously. Zhou Donghuang was standing nearby. Because the woman in green and the young man in gray were both focused on the corpse of the giant wolf, they did not notice him in time. Just then, hearing their companion's voice, the two of them turned to look at Zhou Donghuang, their eyes filled with shock and uncertainty. This handsome young man in white before them, who looked to be about the same age as them, was he really the one who killed the Black Wolf King? One had to know that the Black Wolf King was no ordinary late Khanate stage demon. Unless it was an extremely powerful late Khanate stage adept or an ultimate Khanate stage adept, there was no way that one person could kill it alone. Now, the corpse of the Black Wolf King was lying there, and it had not been taken care of. The young man in white was the only one nearby, and if he was not mistaken, he was the one who had killed the Black Wolf King. Zhou Donghuang nodded slightly in response. Then a thought occurred to him and he asked, "Are you disciples of the Sky Sword sect?" "Yes." The woman in green replied, and at the same time she asked, "Are you not?" "No." Zhou Donghuang shook his head. "Not?" The eyes of the woman in green narrowed as she was shocked. The young man in gray beside her was also shocked. The arrogant young man in green also frowned slightly at this moment. He had not expected that the young man who had killed the Black Wolf King was not a disciple of the Sky Sword sect. The three of them were still thinking, could this young man in white also be a disciple of the Sky Sword sect? This was because in the surrounding area besides the Sky Sword sect, there were no other powerful sects or families. And in these sects and families, it was impossible for there to be such a young late Khanate stage adept, let alone an ultimate Khanate stage adept. "Are you an ultimate Khanate stage adept?" the young man in green asked. This time Zhou Donghuang did not speak. He only shook his head and then looked away. He continued to look around, searching for the place where the Dharma adept had died. No. Seeing Zhou Donghuang shake his head, the three of them naturally thought that he was a late Khanate stage adept, and one of the best of the best. Only a late Khanate stage adept would have the ability to kill the Black Wolf King alone. "My friend." At this time the young man in gray looked at Zhou Donghuang with a smile and said politely, "The Black Wolf King that you killed was also one of our targets this time. We want its fangs and heart. Would you be willing to part with it? Give me a price." The young man in green looked at Zhou Donghuang condescendingly and said casually. When Zhou Donghuang shook his head and denied that he was an ultimate Khanate stage adept, the young man in green looked at Zhou Donghuang differently. At first it was fear, but now it was disdain. Zhou Donghuang ignored the young man in green and looked at the polite young man in gray. He said, "I did not intend to take anything from the wolf. You can have it if you want." "You did not intend to take it?" The young man in green looked even more disdainful. The late Khanate stage Black Wolf King's entire body was a treasure. Even an ultimate Khanate stage adept like him would have dissected it and taken away the valuable parts. This young man in white was just a mid-Khanate stage adept, and yet he dared to say that he did not intend to take anything from the Black Wolf King? What a joke. "My friend, we cannot accept a reward without doing anything. Just as the young man in gray was taken aback and was about to speak again, he was interrupted by the sound of running footsteps, and the ground began to shake. In a moment, 5 wolves that looked exactly the same as the one lying dead on the ground appeared in front of Zhou Donghuang and the others. They lined up in a row and glared at Zhou Donghuang and the others. Occasionally, when they looked at the giant wolf that had been killed by Zhou Donghuang, their eyes were filled with anger and violence, and the black mane on their bodies stood on end. "Ah, I did not expect our luck to be so good. Another 5 Black Wolf Kings have appeared. Alright, we do not need to buy the things that we want from him, we can just take them ourselves." The young man in green laughed. 5 Black Wolf Kings. The lady in green stared at the 5 wolves with fear in her eyes. "Zhao Si, if Xiaoyu and I join forces, we can at most deal with 1 Black Wolf King. Are you confident?" She and the young man in gray had just entered the late Khanate stage not long ago, and their abilities were only average among the late Khanate stage adepts. They would not be a match for a single Black Wolf King. "Roland, don't worry, this is a piece of cake." The young man in green, Zhao Si, smiled confidently. "You and Xiaoyu will join forces to restrain one of the Black Wolf Kings, and then let that young man who is not too bad take care of the other 2. Within 20 breaths I will definitely kill the other 2 Black Wolf Kings, and then we will take care of the rest." As he spoke, Zhao Si looked at the young man in white who was still looking around and said firmly, "Young man, if you do not want to die, then do as I say." End of this chapter. Chapter 213. Ignorant kid, did you hear what I said? Are you deaf? Seeing that Zhou Donghuang was still walking and looking around, Zhao Si's face darkened. Perhaps they were annoyed by Zhao Si's incessant yelling, so the 5 Black Wolf Kings howled at the sky and pounced towards Zhao Si. In the blink of an eye they had surrounded Zhao Si. Damn it! The sudden scene before him caused Zhao Si, who had just recovered from his shock, to have a drastic change in his expression. Because Zhao Si's attention had been on Zhou Donghuang, he had not had time to react to the 5 Black Wolf Kings surrounding him. Otherwise, with his Khanate stage cultivation level, he would have been able to ensure that he would not be surrounded by the 5 Black Wolf Kings. The 5 Black Wolf Kings glared at Zhao Si with their bloodthirsty eyes, causing Zhao Si's hair to stand on end and his entire body to shiver. Although he was an Khanate stage adept, he had only broken through recently. 1 Black Wolf King he could easily kill it. 2 Black Wolf Kings he could barely handle it. 3 Black Wolf Kings life and death. 4 Black Wolf Kings life and death. 5 Black Wolf Kings, death and death. Kid, if we die, you will die too. I advise you not to take any chances. Zhao Si looked at the 5 Black Wolf Kings warily as he looked at the young man in white. His tone had softened, but it was still arrogant. Almost as soon as Zhao Si's voice fell. Roar, roar! The 5 Black Wolf Kings moved at the same time like 5 bolts of lightning, pouncing towards Zhao Si from all directions. Their jaws were wide open, and their fangs glinted with a cold light. Zhao Si. The gray-robed young man, Xieyu's expression changed. His body floated forward like a willow catkin as he unsheathed his long sword. A 10-feet-long sword light whizzed out and pierced towards one of the Black Wolf Kings. This caused the Black Wolf King to abandon Zhao Si and turn around to slap the sword away. Oh. The lady in green followed suit, unsheathing the long sword on her back. Similarly, a ray of green light flashed out and fought alongside Xieyu. They barely managed to fend off the Black Wolf King who had turned around to pounce on them. However, even though the two of them were working together, it was still a little taxing for them to deal with the Black Wolf King. On the other side, Zhao Si, who was surrounded by the 4 Black Wolf Kings, was in an even more pathetic state. He could only rely on his speed to dodge the attacks of the 4 Black Wolf Kings. Although the Xiantian Qi of the 4 Black Wolf Kings was only about 10 feet long, it was extremely condensed. On the other hand, Zhao Si's Xiantian innate Qi was 30 feet long, but it was extremely scattered, giving off a feeling of powerlessness. Friend, make your move. After realizing that Zhao Si was in danger, Xieyu smiled bitterly as he joined forces with the lady beside him to deal with the Black Wolf King. Zhao Si's temper is not very good, but given the current situation, if you don't act now and Zhao Si dies, we will all be wiped out. Friend, I apologize on behalf of Zhao Si. Whether it was Xieyu or the woman beside Xieyu, it wasn't hard to see that the white-clothed young man didn't pay any attention to Zhao Si from beginning to end. Even though they had known Zhao Si for a few years, they could not stand Zhao Si's arrogance. What more the others? Just now, Zhao Si's tone had been filled with disdain. Anyone who was not deaf could hear it. If they were the young man in white, they would also be displeased. Indeed, Zhou Donghuang did not have a good impression of Zhao Si. However, he had a good impression of the other two. Therefore, when he heard the two of them speak, Zhou Donghuang stopped looking around and turned around to look at the pathetic state of the battle. More accurately, he was looking at the pathetic state of the Sky Sword sect disciple named Zhao Si. The other two were still doing well. They had joined forces to fight the Black Wolf King and were evenly matched. Just as Zhou Donghuang was activating the Silver Core Inner Yuan in his elixir field and preparing to kill the Black Wolf Kings. Why are you begging him? Zhao Si shouted, and his tone was filled with rage. If we die, he will die as well. If he doesn't do anything, then he can only wait for death. However, I've changed my mind. Even if he has to die in front of us. As soon as he finished speaking, Zhao Si's eyes were filled with violence. With a sweep of the sword in his hand, the 4 Black Wolf Kings stopped in their tracks. Then the qi beneath his feet surged. He no longer cared about the problem of using his qi to escape the encirclement of the 4 Black Wolf Kings and pounced towards Zhou Donghuang like a bolt of lightning. The 4 Black Wolf Kings gave chase. Die, punk? Zhao Si's eyes were filled with madness. Now he seemed to have lost all sense of reason. Even if he had to die, he would drag the person in front of him down with him. Swoosh. The sword in Zhao Si's hand straightened like a poisonous snake as it sliced through the air. Then Zhou Donghuang bit down, aiming for the throat. Zhao Si, you're crazy. Stop. Zhao Si's 2 companions saw this and their expressions changed. They hurriedly tried to stop Zhao Si. However, was Zhao Si really crazy? Of course not. The qi in his body had been greatly depleted just now, and Zhao Si had realized that even if the young man in white managed to hold back 2 of the Black Wolf Kings, he would not be able to kill the other two and would not be able to escape. As such, he decided to use all his chi in a short period of time to divert the attention of the 4 Black Wolf Kings to the young man in white. Then he would make use of this opportunity to escape. Of course, by doing this, he would be abandoning his 2 companions. Fleeing on our own in the face of danger? Zhou Donghuang stood rooted to the ground, not moving an inch. He watched as Zhao Si sheathed his sword at the critical moment and brushed past him without attacking him. Punk, although I want to kill you in order for me to escape, you should leave your life to the 4 Black Wolf Kings. Ah. As he brushed past Zhou Donghuang, Zhao Si laughed heartily. It was as if he was certain that the 4 Black Wolf Kings would kill Zhou Donghuang and give him time to escape. At this time, the 2 companions who were courting death also realized that Zhao Si was planning to abandon them and escape alone. Their expressions changed drastically. Zhao Si had escaped and the young man in white was dead. They were destined to die. However, in the next moment they were stunned. Heavens! What had they just seen? Was this real? Were they dreaming? Under the shocked gazes of the 2 of them, the white-robed young man who had led the 4 Black Wolf Kings to charge at Zhao Si had, at the most crucial moment, leaped into the air like a celestial being, causing the 4 Black Wolf Kings to miss their target. After the 4 Black Wolf Kings missed their target, they continued to chase after Zhao Si. As Zhao Si's chi became weaker and weaker, the distance between them and Zhao Si continued to close. From the looks of it, they would catch up to Zhao Si in a few breaths' time. Not good. The 2 of them had been distracted by the young man in white's ability to rise into the air. When they regained their composure, they realized that the Black Wolf King had taken the opportunity to attack them. Now it was too late for them to defend themselves. Bang! Just as the 2 of them thought that they were going to die, a silvery palm print descended from the sky and pressed the Black Wolf King into the ground. The Black Wolf King had died in front of them in the blink of an eye. The way he had died was exactly the same as the previous Black Wolf King. Silver Essence Adept. The 2 of them heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, their hearts trembled. They had never imagined that the young man in white, who looked about the same age as them, was actually a Silver Essence Adept. Even in the Sky Sword sect, the most outstanding disciple of the Sky Sword sect who was about the same age as them was only at the early stage of the Primal Core stage. What's going on? On the other side, Zhao Si, who had thought that he had used the young man in white as bait to escape the 4 Black Wolf Kings, suddenly realized that the footsteps behind him were getting closer and closer. In a hurry, he turned his head and saw the white-robed young man standing in the air. Primal Core Adept. Zhao Si's expression changed as he lost his footing and fell to the ground. In the next moment, the 4 Black Wolf Kings leapt towards him. Save me! Save me! In his despair, Zhao Si looked at the young man in white standing in the air and begged for his help. In his opinion, as long as this Primal Core Adept intervened, he would definitely be able to survive. Those who are unjust are doomed to die. Zhou Donghuang only glanced at Zhao Si lightly and left him with these words before returning to his original spot in the air. In the blink of an eye, Zhao Si had been torn to shreds by the 4 Black Wolf Kings. After killing their prey, the 4 Black Wolf Kings turned their heads to look at Zhou Donghuang. Now that they had developed intelligence, a look of fear flashed across their blood-red eyes, and they fled into the forest in the distance. Everything had been settled. Thank you, my lord, for saving our lives. At the same time, the remaining 2 disciples of the Sky Sword sect bowed to Zhou Donghuang in gratitude, their eyes filled with respect. Zhou Donghuang nodded at the 2 of them and left the area. He had looked carefully at the area and had not found any clues as to where the Dharma Adept had died. Now it was time to change locations. After watching Zhou Donghuang's silhouette disappear from their sight, the 2 disciples of the Sky Sword sect regained their senses and looked at the place where their comrade, Zhao Si, had died. Their eyes were filled with anger. Who would have thought that Zhao Si would abandon us and escape on his own? He deserved to die. Regarding Zhao Si's death, the 2 of them did not feel any pity, because Zhao Si's actions had already chilled them to the core. However, Zhao Si's father is still the 4th elder. We still need to find an excuse so that 4th elder does not know that Zhao Si died in front of us. That's right. Our abilities are not as good as Zhao Si's, but we survived. 4th elder is so protective and vengeful that he will not let us off easily. End of this chapter. Chapter 214. After parting ways with the 2 disciples of the Sky Sword sect, Zhou Donghuang began to patiently search the entire mountain range for the burial place of the Dharma adept he was looking for. 1 day passed and there was no result. 2 days passed and there was still no result. After spending a full 5 days, Zhou Donghuang finally found the suspected burial place of the Dharma adept. Of course, before it was completely confirmed, it could only be said to be suspected, because it was too well hidden. It's too well hidden. If not for the fact that these two beasts were fighting and bumped into the brambles here, I would not have found this place. Zhou Donghuang looked at the mountain wall that had cracked open after he had cut down the brambles. Through the crack in the mountain wall, he could see a dark cave passage. Beside Zhou Donghuang, 2 huge creatures lay there, completely lifeless. They were the 2 Khanate beasts that had been fighting. After Zhou Donghuang appeared, they both stopped fighting and turned to attack Zhou Donghuang. In the end, they died at Zhou Donghuang's hands. These few days, I've been to this place at least 3 times. The first 2 times I didn't find it. After shaking his head and sighing, Zhou Donghuang lifted his hand, and a bright silver palm shot out. With a bang, the crack in the wall was blasted open. A cave passage that could fit an adult man appeared in front of Zhou Donghuang. If there are no accidents, it should be inside. After Zhou Donghuang entered the cave passage, there was no obstruction. Finally he entered a dark cave. As Zhou Donghuang's inner yuan condensed into the samadhi fire, the cave immediately lit up. The cave was not spacious and could even be said to be simple. In the middle of the cave, a person sat cross-legged. He was now a skeleton and his robes were tattered and old. On his left hand's middle finger, there was a space ring. Other than that, there was nothing else. Thank you. Zhou Donghuang bowed to the skeleton. After the ceremony, he took the space ring from the skeleton's left hand and searched the surroundings. After confirming that there was nothing else of value, he left. From now on, no one will disturb your peace. After exiting the cave, Zhou Donghuang casually struck out a few times, causing the cave passageway to collapse. Then he dealt with the mountain walls and thorns at the entrance of the cave. After confirming that nothing was out of place, he stepped into the air and left. This spatial ring is actually a supreme-grade spatial ring. Zhou Donghuang instinctively wanted to see what was inside the space ring, but there was no reaction. It was only when he pinched his finger and dripped a drop of blood on it that the space ring reacted. Only top-grade spatial rings could be used by blood binding. Moreover, a top-grade spatial ring had a space of at least 3 square feet, and the largest could even reach a square foot of 10 square feet. 10 square feet, converted to modern Earth units, was about 30 meters. Now, the ultimate space ring in Zhou Donghuang's hand was a cube with a length, width, and height of more than 20 meters. It could be considered a mid-level top-grade spatial ring. Moreover, there was another benefit of a superb space ring. Even if it was taken away, as long as you were still alive and you hadn't removed the ownership, no one would be able to take out the items inside. Let's see what's here. Zhou Donghuang began to look at the items inside the space ring that the Dharma adept had left behind. The first thing he saw was a letter. Because time in the space ring was still, this letter was still as new as ever. On the envelope, the words "for the lucky one" were written in large letters, and the signature was Mo Qian. Obviously, the Dharma peak adept who had left this space ring behind was called Mo Qian. I hope it's just a bunch of nonsense. As he took out the letter from the envelope, Zhou Donghuang frowned slightly. If he had a choice, he really didn't want to open this letter. Usually, he preferred those that left behind various tests because to a certain extent, that was considered as a reward for his hard work. Moreover, the person who left behind these kinds of miraculous encounters would not leave behind any difficult questions after you had passed all the tests and obtained the items inside. Even if they left behind difficult questions, you could completely ignore them. I only obtained the items you left behind after passing the test you left behind. After passing the test, you still want to give me difficult questions? That's not very kind of you. However, if there were no tests left behind and it was purely a free miraculous encounter, and the person who left behind the miraculous encounter had left behind some last words for you to do something for him, for someone who valued favors, you would have to do your best to help him complete the task. This was a form of karma. And Zhou Donghuang belonged to the type of person who valued favors. Indeed. After opening the letter and reading it for a while, Zhou Donghuang shook his head and sighed. These old fogies, they're really bad. Let's see what he left behind first. If it's not enough to move me or if I think it's not worth it, I'll at most return the space ring along with the items inside to him. He had no choice, he had to be soft-hearted after receiving favors from others. If he was an ungrateful person, even if he had read the instructions in the letter, he could have completely ignored it, and it would not have affected him in any way. But for someone like Zhou Donghuang, this was a form of karma that he had no choice but to accept. Unless he did not accept this karma, once he accepted it, he had to see it through to the end. Otherwise, when he went through the deity's tribulation to ascend to the divine realm in the future, it would become a terrifying tribulation of his inner demons. 2 ultimate Dharma spirit weapons, hundreds of thousands of mid-level spirit stones, and many core medicines. This is the core king fruit. If Zhou Donghuang had been able to remain calm at the start, when he saw the giant golden spirit fruit in the space ring, he could not help but lose his composure. The core king fruit was a spirit fruit that could only be consumed by primal core adepts. Even if an adept who had just entered the late primal core stage were to consume it, he would be able to enter the ultimate primal core stage within a few days. Of course, for a spirit fruit like the core king fruit, any primal core adept would only be able to see its effects the first time they consumed it. This is really tempting. As long as I consume this core king fruit, one of my remaining 2 silver essences, within a few days, it will transform into a golden essence. It had to be said that Zhou Donghuang was a little tempted. At this time, Zhou Donghuang had basically looked through everything in the space ring. Just as he was about to retract his thoughts, he realized that in the corner of the space ring, there was something that looked like a dried tree branch. It looked very inconspicuous, and it was no wonder that it had been tossed in the corner. However, when Zhou Donghuang saw it, his eyes suddenly narrowed and he could not wait to take it out. The dried tree branch was about 4 feet long, and the patterns on it were very strange. It looked like scales had grown on it, and it was completely grayish-brown in color. It really is this. At this moment, Zhou Donghuang's breathing quickened. Because of his excitement, his chest rose and fell like a bellows being pulled. Soul Shaper. It's actually Soul Shaper. And it's a complete Soul Shaper. My God. Even in the boundless universe, this is something that can be called a supreme treasure. If the Soul Shaper were to appear, it would be enough for the top warriors of the great clans and supreme sects to compete for it. Even at the peak of my previous life, as long as there was a glimmer of hope for it, I would fight for it. If I had this Soul Shaper in my previous life, why would I need to worry about the inner demons of the deity's tribulation? If I had this Soul Shaper, I would have long entered the deity's tribulation stage, defeated the deity's tribulation, and ascended to the divine realm. The Soul Shaper could be refined by adepts of the Dharma Law stage and above. Once Dharma Law's adepts refined the Soul Shaper, they would be able to condense their divine will in advance. Once this divine will was released, it would be invincible against anyone below the primordial soul stage. After refining a complete Soul Shaper and entering the primordial soul stage, the divine will condensed from the primordial soul stage would not be stronger than that of ordinary primordial soul adepts of the same level, but the strength of the primordial soul would be greatly increased, and they would be able to ignore all primordial soul attacks of primordial soul adepts. After entering the divine transformation stage, they would also be able to ignore all divine will attacks of divine transformation adepts. Later it would still be the same. When they entered the highest stage in the universe, the deity's tribulation stage, their primordial soul would be even more frightening, and they would be able to ignore the inner demons of the deity's tribulation. A complete Soul Shaper. In this boundless universe, if someone took out the Soul Shaper to auction. In my previous life, when I was at my peak, all the wealth I had combined would probably not even be able to bid for a tenth of the complete Soul Shaper. Zhou Donghuang sighed as he carefully placed the Soul Shaper back into his space ring. That Dharma adept probably did not recognize that it was the Soul Shaper. Perhaps, he did not even know of the existence of the Soul Shaper. The Soul Shaper, because of its nature-defying effects, was also known as the Divine Soul Shaper by the thousands of races in the universe. Looks like I will not be able to avoid this karma. Zhou Donghuang looked at the letter in his hand and sighed. In the letter, the Dharma adept named Emogon asked the person who obtained the item he had left behind to try his best to avenge him. His enemy before he reached the end of his life was a primordial soul adept. Furthermore, he was a primordial soul adept who had possessed the body of someone else. And the person who had been possessed was Emogon's only kin, his adopted son. Because of this, he and that person became enemies, to avenge the death of his son. Hunglio Galaxy, the great desolate planet, the burning sect, Gong Sunling. I'll remember this. He even listed many of the evil deeds that Gong Sunling had done. Is he worried that the person who obtained the item you left behind would be a gentleman who would only help you kill evil people and not good people? That's quite thorough thinking. primordial soul adepts had one chance in their lifetime to be reborn. They could use it during normal times and they could also use it when their life was about to end. However, once the possession was successful, they would be stuck at the primordial soul stage for the rest of their lives, and there would be no possibility of breaking through. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, no one would easily possess the body of another. End of this chapter. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.